SaveWithConrad.com.
Yeah, I'm Justin Ruffin from Knoxville, Tennessee. What got me to Save with Conrad was the 83 Weeks podcast. I really wasn't thinking about getting rid of any debt. I just wanted to cash out some equity in the house to do remodeling. But I did both, so that was pretty awesome. Worked out great. Redid the foyer, built pantry space, and there's little odds and ends when I first bought the house that I wanted to take care of, and we were able to take care of it. So, yeah, paid off 2 cars and some credit card debt. So probably all in all, get $30,000 in that. And then I got some $30,000 more equity out of the house, and still plenty of equity left over. So payment's good. I lowered my interest rate. I'm in a much better spot than I was. Super easy. Everybody was great. Very, very awesome people. Francis and Steve were great to work with. They were awesome. Made it for a very easy, seamless experience. I'd probably say all in all, probably $1,000 a month at least. I'm lowered my interest rate, especially the way the interest rates are right now, which is, that's amazing. I'm Justin Bruckman from Knoxville, Tennessee. I saved over $1,000 with SaveWithConrad.com, and I did a lot of renovations with that money as well.
NMLS number 2129, equal housing lender. SaveWithConrad.com. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff, and man, am I excited for today's episode, because we get to talk about what's happening today and what happened over 30 years ago. We're going to be starting our conversation today talking about the newest rash of WWE releases. Now, normally we're talking about this in the month of April, but WrestleMania was a little later this year. I guess it has become customary. We're all sort of expecting this, a bit of a house cleaning from WWE post-WrestleMania. Well, it happened, including some names that maybe we didn't all expect, names that had spent a lot of time on TV, names that had a lot of brand equity. And there's a lot of reports, a lot of rumor and innuendo. Why did these releases happen? And more importantly, what's next for those talent? Will they go the way of Drew McIntyre and Cody Rhodes and reinvent themselves and come back bigger stars? Will they take refuge in another promotion? I don't know, maybe one based in Jacksonville? Or is it time to reinvent yourself on another continent? I mean, how many stars did we see? AJ Styles comes to mind. When he left TNA, he became an incredibly different performer in New Japan. Or at least that's the way the American audience, or at least the American critics, perceived it. What's necessary for these talents in their next chapter? We'll discuss all of that and more. And believe it or not, I can't believe this is real, but Derek Sabato, who normally helps us with some of our research, and believe it or not, has been helpful at a time or two with the Wrestling Observer newsletter. He's going to give his take and be involved in this conversation with Eric Bischoff. So we're going to get somebody who's in the mix, so to speak, chatting with Eric about those releases. But stay tuned. Once we're finished with that, we've got something from 1994 you don't want to miss. It's a very special edition of 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff.
We are live here on Podcast Heat and adfreeshows.com with a man who knows more about the wrestling industry than many people claim to have been able to accomplish. The Hall of Famer, a real American, Mr. Eric. Eric, how you doing today?
Good, man. I guess, that's one thing I can say for certain. I am a real American. I was born in Detroit, and I guess that makes me officially an American. A real one.
A real one, and we will continue to follow. And make sure you're following Eric on social media for all the updates that are coming quickly and fast from Real American Wrestling. And we are talking today about the recent WWE releases with a little bit of different spin. Me and Eric talked last month about the dirt sheets and what the dirt sheets do and contribute. And we're going to talk about the reaction to when people get released in WWE. And we are joined right now by some of our ad-free shows members and Podcast Heat members, Adam and Justin. Good afternoon, actually. Good morning for Eric. Drop your questions in the chat. Drop your super chats. We'll be happy to get to them. Eric, the first thing I want to kick off with is you've gone through this process of releasing talent before and the dirt sheets reaction to it. My research, I didn't find anything. You didn't make any talent cuts in 2019 when you were in a executive position for the WWE. But when it came to releasing talent for WCW in the 90s, and there were contract negotiations and not a lot of releases, a lot of expirations, you saw a lot of information that would get put out, mainly by the talent through the dirt sheets. Is that correct?
I mean, that's a big part of it. Obviously, somebody gets released. They want to let the world know that they're free and clear, and they're really searching for a new gig. So it's to be expected. And I think, to a degree, it's understandable and encouraged. Ideally, you go about that without burning any bridges.
Right.
I think that's a smart way to do it. Some people are really smart. Some people are really stupid, and personalize it and try to put heat on the company that let them loose. And that's fine. You can do that. Makes it tough to ever come back. And it also is kind of an indication, at least in my opinion, of what kind of person you are. Because if you're willing to bury the people that were paying you and then decided once they stop paying you to bury them, guess what's probably going to happen at some point when I bring you on and have to make the decision to cut you? It's like not the smartest thing to do, but it happens, and I understand it.
Have you ever been reached out to by Dave Meltzer, Wade Keller, anybody in that nature in the 90s when you would have a talent released and they would call you for comment? Do you remember that at any point?
Yeah, not specifically relating to a release, but I've said many times, one of the reasons that I have a lot of respect for guys like Mike Johnson and Dave Scheer, even though at times they've written things that I found, uncomfortable or I didn't agree with, perhaps because I had information that they didn't have. Despite that, those two in particular, Jason Powell, who works, or at least worked, I don't know if he still does, with Wade Keller, also a guy who would reach out and ask. And I respected that. Sometimes I could be forthright and explain things from my point of view. But oftentimes when you're releasing somebody, you have to be really careful about what you say, because they can come back and claim damages and create litigation. And even though it's sometimes bogus and ends up being nothing more than a very expensive pain in the ass, it's a pain in the ass you don't need. So oftentimes people would call and ask for specific details. And from a legal perspective, I could not be forthcoming because I didn't want to walk into a potential litigation. So you end up being very general and non-specific. And that isn't always enough for people who are writing about these types of things, but it's the nature of the legal beast.
When you think back, and off the top of my head, the three biggest releases I remember in WCW was Steve Austin, Sean Waltman, and Raven. There was a lot of conjecture and a lot of talk at that point in time about all three of those releases. Austin
and they were newsworthy. Those were releases that definitely warranted interest and reaction from the peripheral wrestling news media.
When you think back to those three instances compared to what just happened with the WWE, those are individual cases brought on by events that were going on where this just seemed like it might be time to move on from some of this talent. Do you think there's a difference when it's a mass release like this, a bunch of talents cut, compared to just those individual releases that get a lot more headlines?
Obviously, there's a huge difference, but that doesn't matter to the dirt sheets. And part of the reason so much attention and time and conversation and emotion and all of the bullshit that goes on in the internet wrestling community is because there's nothing really else to talk about, right? It is fertile ground for subjective opinion and the people that live off the dopamine hit that their ridiculous social media commentary provides them. I don't know. People want so badly, the internet wrestling community wants so badly for there to be real competition, not cosplay competition, not people out buying themselves participation trophies, whether you're Dave Meltzer or anybody else. They want that energy and the volume of activity that took place during the Monday Night Wars when there was real competition. Today, it's kind of a mirage. Technically, you can say, since there are multiple people and players in the sports entertainment space, I guess there is. and you can probably convince yourself that it's more meaningful than it really is, if that's what you feel the need to do. But in reality, there is one major player in terms of its audience footprint. Everybody else is a wannabe. But the audience, the internet wrestling community, I should say, wants so badly to have that sense of battle that went on during the Monday Night Wars that they create it when it doesn't really exist. The WWE, I don't know how many people they have under contract. A lot.
Yes.
I don't even know how many hours of programming that they produce anymore. It's too hard to keep track of because it's a shit ton. But when you have that much talent on your roster, it's not a job for life, folks. It's a subjective art form. Sometimes you get hot and sometimes you get not. And when you get not, you get moved along. Or perhaps you never really got hot, but there was always a feeling that the potential was there. Well, guess what? Not everybody lives up to their potential when it comes to art and entertainment because it is so subjective. Sometimes you have the talent and you have the potential, but the timing isn't right for you. So you get released. Sometimes you come back because the situation has changed and the needs have changed and the opportunities have changed. Entertainment in any form is an ongoing evolution of an art form. And sometimes you have a place in that and sometimes you don't. And if you go into the entertainment business, whether it's professional wrestling, sports entertainment, there's a reason now I'm going to start delineating between the two.
Oh, I'm sure there is.
Decide, I'm going to go into sports entertainment. I want to become what we refer to today as a professional wrestler. Guess what? It's a risky fucking business, dude, or dudette. Just like waking up one day and saying, I'm pretty good at guitar and I want to be a rock star. So I'm going to be in the music entertainment business. Well, guess what? The odds of you being successful are about, I don't know, 1 out of a million. It's part of the life. It's part of the business. And I think the way WWE is doing it is, at least it appears to be from the outside looking in, to be kind of a methodical business approach to managing their talent budget. You can't keep everybody around because you like them or because they have potential someday. You cycle people in, you cycle people out. It's the nature of the business, and the internet wrestling community that tries to make more of it than just that is really just entertaining themselves. They're low-level thinkers, low vibrational human beings. They get their dopamine hit from saying stupid shit on the internet, and they feed off of each other. And your buddy, your boss, Dave Meltzer, is the king of low-level thinking.
Do you ever feel like car shopping is sort of designed to help you second guess yourself? I mean, is this a good price? Am I making the right choice? Well, with Car Gurus, you don't have to worry or wonder or even wait. They have the most inventory of new cars and used cars, so you can find the best deal. You'll find their unbiased deal ratings, their price drop alerts, and their in-depth vehicle reviews make you feel that you're going to be making the right decision. Because a big deal should never feel like a big risk. That's why I go to Car Gurus for that peace of mind. Car Gurus will connect you with trusted dealerships when you're ready, ensuring a transparent and hassle-free buying experience. With over 4 million listings, Car Gurus has more car listings than any other major online automotive marketplace in the United States, so you can find the best deal. Car Gurus give you the control to shop how you want to shop, with the tools, information, and data-driven deals ratings that you need. It's no wonder that SimilarWeb estimated traffic data shows that Car Gurus is the #1 most visited car shopping site. So what are you waiting for? Go buy or sell your next car today with Car Gurus at cargurus.com. Go to cargurus.com to make sure your big deal is the best deal. That's cargurus.com. That's cargurus.com, cargurus.com.
Speaking of that avenue, one of the questions we got from AOTV Productions is, hey, Eric, what did you think of the way some of the towns reacted to Dave Meltzer's report, why some of them were released? And I'm going to cue it up and read it for you if you are unaware of it.
I haven't seen much lately.
That's okay. So you've been very busy. Many of the WWE NXT releases were reportedly people who were perceived as, quote, not working hard in training. And here's a direct quote from Dave Meltzer. Many of those cut were perceived as not working hard in training. And if you don't work hard in training, there's so many people who do. And at this point, if the feeling is you're not working hard in training, I saw the term lazy. The ones who are lazy are going to be gone. The ones who didn't stand out are going to be gone. Priscilla Kelly, who was Gigi Dolan before she was released in WWE, had this response to it. When I wasn't traveling to work for either of the two companies I was working for, I trained very hard 3 to 4 days a week, bumping my ass off and doing cardio drills with one of the best / toughest coaches I've worked with, and worked out every single day. The live events every other weekend. So yeah, I don't want to hear this. The way my body feels says otherwise. And Alania Black, who was, oh God, I'm going to butcher this name, Core Jade, I think it was, responded with this, plus can't forget having to go to my own gym outside of work after, quote, strength and conditioning that wasn't doing anything for me other than get me body shamed by my bosses, coworkers, and fans. Crazy. Eric, there's a lot to break down there, as Conrad likes to say. So I'm going to start with the Meltzer quote, which is, many of those cut were perceived as not working hard in training.
According to who?
I heard the same thing from those in WWE as well, that they were looking to.
Look, and here's the deal. If Dave Meltzer or anybody else, including you, want to be taken seriously when it comes to this type of stuff, then tell us where you heard it from. Otherwise, don't bring it up. If you don't have not you necessarily, Derek,
yep.
I like you a lot and respect you. But if one doesn't have the balls or the information to back up saying something like that, keep it to your fucking self, because I don't know if it's true. And just because somebody hears it from somebody inside the company, that doesn't make it true either. If there was a decision made by Shawn Michaels, presumably, or whoever else is operationally running NXT, if they've made a comment, then let's talk about that. But to rely on Dave Meltzer's, I heard it from somebody that heard it from somebody inside WWE, or even yours, I'm sorry, that's not enough for me to comment on.
Now, the comment is also tied into the Triple H interview that was done not long after WrestleMania, where he said there are going to be some things that we've noticed with people coming up from NXT to the main roster that have gotten, quote, lazy.
Okay, stop right there. Let's break this down, because we can't just have one on and on and on and on. Yep. Let's break down that comment. That comment, I didn't read it, not familiar with it, but taking it at face value, if Triple H said that, and I presume he did, I believe you.
Yes.
Yeah, that's kind of a broad general statement that anybody who's developing athletes, performers, or anything else in a group environment would say. Some people are going to work harder than others. Those who work harder than others generally succeed. Those who don't generally don't. Kind of a general statement. But Dave is now connecting that previous comment, which is a general comment, and I think one everyone would agree with who's ever actually been in an environment where people are competing for a position.
Because it is very much a
job, because you're one of the boys or ladies, whatever. I just don't think it's fair to take a random or out of context, in this case, comment and then contextualize it with today's news and say, well, it's because many people are lazy. I can't take that seriously.
When you think about the talent firing back on that comment, do you think it's a fire back at Dave, company, someone maybe in there telling him that? Do you think it's directed more at the dirt sheets, or do you think it's directed more at the company?
It's hard to say, because it's I guess it depends on who said it and what their state of minds are. Kind of goes back to what I said at the beginning, though. Typically, look, I get it. I've been fired.
Yeah,
I've been fired a lot. And it hurts. It's kind of depending on the situation. I'll go back to the last time I was fired, 2019, after only 4 months in the gig. I'm grateful that I was fired, by the way, because it was a dead-end opportunity. The chemistry between Vince and I was never going to be what it would need to be in order for me to be able to deliver what I'm capable of delivering. And I failed. It's my fault. I was given the opportunity. I couldn't create that chemistry. So it is what it is. But nonetheless, and even though I was in some respects relieved by being let go, it was still embarrassing.
Yeah.
I knew what I was going to face, particularly in the dirt sheet media, because it is what it is and it's predictable as hell. It's still embarrassing. It's still, it gives you a sense of insecurity, meaning you don't know what you're going to do next. Most of the time, I wasn't as concerned about that really at this stage of my life, because I wasn't totally dependent on that opportunity. Let's put it that way. I wanted it, and it would have changed my life and my wife, my family's life in a really positive way had it worked out. And if, for example, I was still there, it would have positively affected not only my life, but my family's life from a financial perspective. But it wasn't like the end of the world for me either. I really wasn't worried about it financially. Even though I wasn't in a really great position financially, I still wasn't worried about it.
Right.
But if you're, in your 20s and your 30s, especially mid 30s, knocking on late 30s door, and you've been, out there trying to make a name for yourself in this world for the last 10, 15, 20 years, and you finally get signed by WWE, and then that opportunity goes away, that's a very, very uncomfortable feeling, particularly when there's not a lot of other places to go. What do you do? If, I guess from a financial perspective, AEW is an obvious choice, but even they have a limit as to how many people they can bring in under their roster. I think they do anyway. I would assume they do. But other than that, where do you go? And that's really uncomfortable. So I think a lot of times, because of the emotional state that people are in, particularly the first 4 or 5 days after they get the news, they're embarrassed. They don't want the community to realize that they weren't good enough to be afforded further opportunity in WWE. It's embarrassing. And people react when they get embarrassed. They react when they become insecure because they don't know what they're going to do next. It's a very uncomfortable feeling. And I get it because I've been there. But you have to have the discipline and the professionalism and maturity to keep your emotions to yourself, because even though what you're saying, even if it's true, it can come back to bite you in the ass.
Right.
It can change the perception of people who might otherwise have been willing to hire you or rehire you in the case of WWE. Whether they're reacting to getting terminated or whether they're reacting to Dave, I don't know. I can't put myself in somebody else's mind, but it almost doesn't matter because the end result is the same. The end result is you're creating a perception. You're butthurt, deservedly so. You're embarrassed, understandably so. And you're nervous about what you're going to do next. That's human nature. But learn how to control it. Because if you don't if you don't control your emotions and you let your emotions control you, whether you're reacting to a dirt sheet piece of shit parasite who's just out there trying to get attention and his dopamine hit in social media, or you really feel that way, give it a week and give it some thought before you comment.
All right, man, listen up. Is there a better way to send cash than Cash App? I don't think so. When it comes down to making business easy, I'm talking about sending or receiving money. Cash App is the go-to in my neck of the woods. I'm a big believer in this, and I know you will be too. I can't stress how common this is too. I feel like I was behind the curve. I've only had Cash App for like 3 or 4 years, but I feel like I was the last adopter. And now that I'm actually using Cash App, I understand it. Making money move should be easy, and Cash App is there. They're giving you that hot tag. It's fast, it's safe, and it's honestly just the way more personalized version of all the other apps that are out there. There's no extra hoops to jump through. There's no extra stress. All the tools are right there to help you cash in. Plus, sending money with Cash App actually feels safe. They're looking out for you. If something seems sketchy, or as the kids say, if it's sus, and they think you might be sending money to a potential scammer, Man, they'll warn you and make you think twice before you press the send button. That's like having a personal bodyguard for your cash. I feel like Shawn Michaels, and Cash App is my diesel. You can even spice up your payments with custom text and stamps and backgrounds. And I didn't know you could do that. So the first time that happened to me, I was like, wait a minute. Can I do this for everything I send? Let's just say Dave Silva has gotten some funny Cash Apps for me. If for whatever insane reason you don't already have Cash App, just download it from your phone's app store, sign up, and enter our code 83 weeks in your profile. You can send $5 to a friend, and then you'll get $10 for just getting started. Let me repeat that. If you don't already have Cash App, just download it from your phone's app store, sign up, and enter our code 83 weeks in your profile. Then send $5 to a friend, and you'll get $10 for just getting started. That's right. For a limited time only, new Cash App users can use our exclusive code to earn some additional cash. For real, there's no catch. Just download the Cash App and sign up. Use that exclusive referral code 83 weeks in your profile, and then just send $5 to a friend within 14 days, and then you'll get $10 dropped right into your account. Terms apply. That's money. That's Cash App.
One of the things you brought up was where the talent will go next, and AOTV Productions had another good super chat question for you. Hey, Eric, what do you think of the possibility of these released superstars coming back to WWE through TNA? Now, Drew McIntyre was cut, went back toward the Indies, a whole different world back then, but now he's back on top with the WWE. The hard part of this is now the WWE's relationship with TNA. WWE's buying AAA. The world of wrestling is somehow getting smaller. Opportunities are closing. It's going to be harder sometimes to get back when they have that much reach and agreements with other companies. Do you agree with that?
No, I think the opposite is true. I think who just recently came back to WWE after having been released for a couple of years.
Rusev recently returned from AEW. Aleister Black, but now I can't think of Aleister Black, but was previously Malachi Black. Oh, there's somebody else, and now I'm blanking off the top of my head.
I mean, here's the point. WWE is a global freaking juggernaut. There is going to be more opportunity for more wrestlers to be gainfully employed long-term because of WWE, the acquisition or association, whatever the case may be. TNA is not an acquisition. It's an association. I don't know what the details are of AAA. Let's just assume for the sake of this conversation, it is a form of an acquisition. It doesn't matter. They've still got to put great talent out there. And if you're a great talent and you don't do stupid shit and say stupid shit that buries you with decision makers, the opportunity for you to come back in any way, shape, or form in any number of opportunities is only enhanced by WWE and the strength of it, because AAA is a stronger company because of its association with WWE than it is without. Otherwise, they wouldn't be fucking doing it. Same for TNA. TNA is in a much better position with relation to its association with WWE than it is without. So I get the desire to create the monopoly storyline and narrative. Oh, these poor wrestlers are never going to have the chance because the big bad WWE is gobbling up all these wrestling companies. It's the exact opposite. It just depends how you choose to look at it as an individual. And by the way, if you bury yourself and expose yourself for being an unprofessional, emotional, underdeveloped adult by reacting to stupid shit Dave Meltzer says, yeah, it's going to be harder for you. But Drew McIntyre is a perfect example. He got cut. What did he do? He worked his ass off and he came back. Rusev, Miro, same thing. Aleister Black, same thing. Had Aleister or Rusev or anybody else, went on an emotional journey to expose all the reasons why they were wronged by WWE, you think they'd be back? Probably not.
Probably not.
So just be a fucking pro. Quit But you're whining and you're bitching and your childish reactions because of stupid things that other ignorant people who have never been in the industry say, because their opinions don't really fucking matter. This gets me a little hot because this is the disruptive, not even disruptive. I don't mind disruption. This is the negative garbage that Dave in particular, Meltzer, and others like him who live off of the garbage, the low rent, low vibrational, low thinking garbage. That's how they make their money, by promoting it, propagating it, trying to make it sound more important than it really is. And it ends up sucking people in who say stupid shit that ends up hurting their career. It's really dumb.
We have one last comment I'm going to throw up on the screen, and then I have a really good question from Coach Rosie I'm going to get to. Braun Strowman's quote-unquote high WWE salary playing a part in his release. From Meltzer, quote, he is the one that the salary was high. One person told me they felt he was paid more than how they were using him. I guess is the best way to put it, but salary played a part in this. When you're talking about a corporate entity now in TKO owning WWE, sometimes salaries do play a role in someone's release, does it not?
Of course it does. It's a business. Look, it's so funny because Meltzer in particular, for years, the narrative was, oh, he had too many people under contract. He was paying everybody too much money. Dave Meltzer harped on that for years. But his buddy Tony Khan, who's collecting professional wrestlers like figurines and action figures, you talk about a bloated freaking roster. But that's a good thing because Tony cares about people. He's going to keep paying you even though he doesn't use you. His fucking roster, 80% of it's like a witness protection program list. You never see him. Whatever happened to Scorpio Sky? I don't know. He just evaporated. Yeah, but hey, he got his check. So from Dave's point of view, when Tony Khan collects wrestlers, continues to pay people, 80% of whom you don't even see on television, maybe 60%, I don't know, a lot. That's okay. Because it's Tony Khan and it's his buddy. And it's his, AEW is his wet dream come true. That's okay. But when WWE makes decisions based on financial considerations, because God almighty, it's a publicly held company and the owners and officers of that company have a fiduciary responsibility. You Dave Meltzer fans, Google it. A fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders to maximize the profit of that company. Well, guess what? You don't get to do it by keeping people around who don't return on the investment. For whatever reason, subjective or otherwise. It's called business. It's real life.
I got to put this up because it's a super chat. He paid for you to see it. So
I don't even apologize. You're apologizing for it already.
I'm apprehensive to put this up because I actually think it's a funny question.
Don't be scared.
You ready? Instagram, a wrestling historian. Did you prefer firing wrestlers in person or fast?
It depends. Like sometimes I like to see the look on their face. Like if somebody really deserves to be fired, I would prefer, given the choice, to be there in person for it. Because if they deserve it, I like to think of it as a learning experience. I love to be the teacher.
Do you think Honky Tonk Man learned anything?
Some people are not capable. There's a certain point in your development as a human being where your brain is wired the way your brain is wired. Now, you can make a conscious decision and long-term commitment to rewire your brain. And there's a number of different ways scientifically proven that you can do that, right? But it involves learning how to manage your subconscious and things like that. So I'm not saying it can't be done. Like someone, like a Honky Tonk Man, when I fired him, is 100% incapable of changing and rewiring their brain. It is theoretically possible. Highly fucking unlikely, but it's possible.
I got a good one from Coach Rosie.
The FedEx, look, here's a more serious side of it. I joked about firing people that deserve to be fired. I joked. Sometimes it's really hard. There's the opposite of that too. When you have to make a decision about letting somebody go that has given 100%, has the right attitude, they're a professional and strive to be even more so in every category. But because of circumstances, you've got to make that hard decision. At that point, the chicken shit in me comes out. I'd much rather not have to face that person because I don't want to share in your disappointment, even though it's my responsibility to do it. And I end up doing it. Given the choice, I'd rather just send a letter. But that's not fair to people that have tried and have done everything they possibly can. But as a victim, I guess, of circumstance more than anything else, it's just not their time. That's not fun. I hate that. I hate letting people like that go.
All right, man, you can't have a good time in bad boots, and that's why you need Tecovas. Have you ever wondered if you can pull off boots in your personal style? Well, you owe it to your feet to pull on a pair of Tecovas. Being confident isn't about being different. It's about being yourself. Find comfort in the traditions of the West and confidence from making it your own. Honor the West by leaving your own boot print. Tecovas crafts quality Western boots for everyone, from generational ranchers and lifelong cowboys to just guys like me, first-time boot buyers. And every one of Tecovas boots are handcrafted with over 200 meticulous steps for broken-in comfort that comes right out of the box. Whether it's a long day or a big night, your Tecovas are built to last and impress, and there's no compromise between quality and style. I can't brag on these enough. I hooked my dad up with not one, but 2 pair this past Christmas. He loves it. Dad even had a little flood in his closet, and the first thing he was worried about is, did it mess up my boots? And when the claims adjuster came over to survey all the damage, when Dad said, "Oh, it messed up my boots," and when my dad brought them around the corner, the insurance adjuster said, "Are those Tecovas?" "Yeah, we got to hook you up on that. We don't want to ruin your Tecovas." And you are going to love your Tecovas just like my dad and that insurance adjuster did, because they've got a best in the West guarantee. Check this out. You get free returns and exchanges for 30 days. Tecovas is the real deal. They're the best, and they know it, and they put their money where their mouth is. Try it, and if you don't love it, come on. Tecovas is the way to go, and right now you can get 10% off at tecovas.com/83weeks when you sign up for email and text. That's right, 10% off at tecovas.com/83weeks. Tecovas.com/83weeks. See site for details. Tecovas, point your toes west.
I have one more quote I want to give up to you from JBL with Conrad this past week regarding the talent releases, and I want your thoughts on it. I've been through being fired, being cut, all that stuff. It sucks, but it's a part of life. You're not adopted by Hunter or Nick Khan. You're not adopted by Vince McMahon. This is something that you have always a plan for. And I saw Matt Cardona had something on the internet, and he's right. He said you can do a few things. You can live off your WWE name, make appearances. That's your prerogative. You're making money that way, no big deal. That's fine to do things like that. That's why you built the name. Or you can reinvent yourself, have some fun, and make some money. To me, if you're not ready to take the next step and figure out what you want to do, if you want to continue in this business, you need to relearn how to rebuild your brand, do what Matt Cardona did. There are so many avenues and so many paths for it now. To me, you can make it back as long as you don't do dumb shit.
I love JBL. Tell me why he and I get along. That sounded like something I could have said or would have said. It sounds very similar to what we talked about here. Don't do dumb shit. That's the best advice anybody can give anybody. Just don't do dumb shit, and you'll probably have another opportunity. The dumb shit is the whining and complaining and feeding into the low-level fucking garbage on the internet wrestling community boards. That's dumb shit.
We got one last question from Coach Rosie, and it's a great one. Hashtag Ask Eric. Do you want the dirt sheets to cover RAF?
Yeah, they can't get professional wrestling or sports entertainment rights, so let's get them into a legitimate sport. No, fuck, I could care less. Look, they're going to do it because Hulk's involved and I'm involved, and every dirtbag out there that doesn't know what they're talking about is going to have an opinion, and feel free to express it. There's nothing, whatever I want or don't want really doesn't matter. Let me put it this way. There'll be no official access. It's not part of the press that we're interested in courting or accommodating, but they're going to cover it anyway. And they would cover it the same way if we did give them access. So the answer is probably not. Now, if there are people that kind of look at Ariel Helwani, for example, he's got his feed in MMA. He's got his feed in professional wrestling. Chris Van Vliet, same thing. Are there people who cover professional wrestling in social media that we would love to talk to? Of course. But is it going to be dipshits like Dave and the low-hanging fruit that live off their dopamine hits from the internet wrestling community? Yeah, that's not going to happen.
When do we see you next, Eric? Is it 83 weeks tomorrow?
What is tomorrow? Friday?
Tomorrow's Friday.
I think
Maybe.
so. I've been looking at email, text messages going back and forth, and we're herding squirrels at this point. And if we could get all 3 squirrels together at a time when it's works for everybody, then it'll be tomorrow. Otherwise, I don't know what we're going to do. Here's the good news. I just take my shit with me when I travel. And if I have to do it from my hotel room, I will.
Eric Bischoff, the man of many backgrounds and podcasts. Every time I watch another clip, he's in a different spot with a different thing behind him. It's amazing. He continues the hustle, doesn't stop, doesn't matter where he's at. This was a learning experience, and it's interesting to see what's going to come from it as the WWE possibly makes more releases sometime soon. It wouldn't surprise me. Appreciate all the super chats and the comments below. Yes, even you, Instagram and wrestling historian, fired in person or FedEx. It's a perfect way to end today.
I love that. It was a great question. I love wrestling historians' comments and questions. He's a smart guy.
He is. Eric, anything else you think we need to cover or anything we need to promote other than to pay attention to Eric's social media?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of going on right now, but none of it is really newsworthy. Just a lot of little details that are all equally important, and focusing on that, but nothing that's really that exciting to talk about. And when there is, and there will be in the months to come as we get closer to August 30th, I'll be talking about it here and everywhere else I get an opportunity. So just keep watching that, social media. Keep watching my Twix, my X at eBischoff.
Turn your notifications on 83weeks.com, eBischoff on Twix. Is that what we're calling it, Twix?
I call it Twix, but it's X.
Make sure you're ringing that bell, following, subscribing. Thank you all for joining us today. We'll be back once again in a little bit talking something else about professional wrestling with Eric Bischoff. Thanks, everyone.
All right, boys and girls, now it's time for a pivot. We're going to be taking a look at WCW Saturday Night from 1994. Is there anything more fun than watching old school wrestling? I mean, that's what this podcast is all about, nostalgia. Now, as a reminder, when we're getting in our Wayback Machine here, we're talking February 12th, 1994. So this would be before Hulk Hogan comes to WCW. This is years before the NWO. This is a version of World Championship Wrestling, still trying to gain any sort of traction and prove profitable. As a reminder, according to Turner's own accounting, WCW has yet to turn a profit. It didn't happen in 88, of course, nor 89 or 90 or 91 or 92. But as we all know, by 93, Eric Bischoff is getting his hands on the product, and he's starting to make some changes. Profit still eludes them in 93. But in 94, here comes the Hulkster. But we're not quite there yet. We're going to talk about February 12th, 1994. Now, this was a little bit of bonus content that we originally posted behind the paywall over at adfreeshows.com. But it's going to be fun to watch it alongside Eric because we're going to see the debut of Terrorizing. Yeah, wonder whatever happened to that guy. Terrorizing. How cool is it that we're about to watch the WCW, the national television debut of Triple H? I think that's super cool, man. I mean, we all know what an iconic character he became in the WWF, and we all got to sort of witness the evolution of Hunter Hearst Helmsley going from being the blue blood to now being the badass. But to know it actually started in WCW, I don't think we talk about that often enough. Everyone immediately goes to talk about Mick Foley, and certainly Stone Cold Steve Austin and Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. But Triple H, are you kidding? I mean, he's running WWE now, and it all started in WCW. In an alternate universe, what if Eric could retain him and he never went to the WWF and he was a WCW guy? It's just fun to think about. We'll also take a look at what was working in WCW at the time, not just the debut of Terror Rising, but Johnny B. Bad is going to be challenging Rick Rude for the world title. Now, I know in that context, that just seems weird. Most of us don't even really associate Rick Rude with being the world champ because, well, WCW called it the goofy international title. It did look awesome, though, didn't it? The big gold belt around Rick Rude's waist. But Mark Marrow back then is Johnny B. Bad. Is that one of the more classic WCW characters of all time? I know people think it was a little over the top, but I think Mark Marrow pulled it off fabulously. But you really want to talk about an Easter egg. Guess who's in the crowd for this show? Ted Turner himself. Yeah, billionaire Ted is front row ringside for this show. This is a lot of fun. We're watching WCW Saturday Night, and that was the A show. Once upon a time, WCW Saturday Night, I mean, at peak WCW, it was like the third show at best. Nitro was number 1, Thunder was 2, but man, in 94, this is the A show. This is the competitor for Monday Night Raw, but it's WCW Saturday Night from February 12th, 1994. Now, I want you to watch along with us. If you've never done this before, you're going to have a blast. Think of this as like a second screen experience. All you need to do is pull up your Peacock app and go to season 3, episode 7 of WCW Saturday Night. So once you're inside Peacock, just search for WCW Saturday Night and then look for season 3, episode 7. I know that's silly, but that'll get you to February 12th, 1994. One more time, inside Peacock, look for WCW Saturday Night, season 3, episode 7, and get ready as we watch February 12th, 1994, WCW Saturday Night. God, it feels like forever ago. I guess it was 31 years ago. Here we go, right here on 83 Weeks.
Welcome to adfreeshows.com. My name is Derek Sabato, and I'm here with the Hall of Famer himself, the former WCW executive, the leader of 83 Weeks and 83 Meets, Mr. Eric Bischoff. Eric, how you doing today?
Man, thank you for plugging 83 Meets. 83 Meets, MEATS, is coming your way very, very soon. I'm going to get a look at the website this week. We're going to have some really interesting conversations with some pretty cutting-edge people like, Dr. Sean Baker, who is a surgeon and has been on the carnivore diet for about 8 years. He holds multiple world records in rowing competitions. Really smart guy, incredibly nice guy, and on the leading edge of the carnivore diet movement. We're going to talk to a friend of mine by the name of AJ Richards. AJ Richards is I've known him for a long time. I met him down in Arizona when I lived there, and coincidentally, he lives up here in Cody now and is very involved in the regenerative ranching business. And he and his family have been in the cattle business for, I think, 2 or 3 generations. So this isn't a new endeavor for him. It's kind of a coincidence, but there's a lot of really cutting edge information nutritionally about the carnivore diet and nutrition in general. And we're going to be talking about all that stuff and linking people up with some things that both my wife, Lori, and I have found in terms of resources for information and knowledge and ways to improve your life. So that'll be coming your way very, very soon, along with a lot of additional programming on 83weeks.com. But tonight, I say tonight because it's freaking dark out. It's 7:00 in the morning here in Cody. The sun is just beginning to peek up over the mountains and a little hint of orange, but essentially it's dark.
It is.
Doing this in the dark. Now, not for you because you're on the East Coast, but
I am on the East Coast. The reason I brought up 83 Meets is because I can smell breakfast cooking as we speak.
You lucky dog.
It is an early Sunday morning to record this bonus show. We are watching back a WCW Saturday Night episode that was voted on by you, the members of adfreeshows.com. It is I will say, a historical episode of the program. Recently uploaded to Peacock. So while we get ready, please whip out your Peacock, head on over WCW Saturday Night. It is season 3, episode 17. We're going to be watching along a little bit under 90-minute episode from February in 1994. It is Notable for a lot of things. One of them is Ted Turner is on the show. Second, you'll see some familiar faces that you may not realize have gone on to bigger and better things from 30 years ago. And yes,
I can think of one guy in particular.
Yeah.
He's done all right for himself.
He's on to new and broader horizons, it sounds like. But yes, we are 30 years ago on this episode, and you may recognize the big stars, and we will get into that. We are opening the show, and we are going to press play in about 10 seconds. Eric, are you ready?
I'm ready, my friend.
Perfect. All right, we're going to hit play in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1.
I love this open. Go ahead.
I do too. I was just watching it before we hit record, and I was like, man, I was 9 for WCW Saturday Night in 1994, and I remember sitting down every Saturday at 6:05 watching TBS and thinking this is like the coolest show opening. And
yeah, this was cutting edge. I remember when this initiative was approved. Everybody was so excited because the open for WCW Saturday Night had been pretty stale and had been around for a long time. So this was like the first real high production value kind of cutting edge thing that WCW had done in a long time. So we were all really excited about this.
We are 2 years from Terminator 2 coming out. And I remember this being that futuristic Skynet type of opening, and it's one of my favorites. Who would have put something together like that? Was it Craig Leathers at the time?
No, I don't think it would have been Craig. I do, for whatever reason, I think it was Sharon Sadello was involved. I don't know how she got involved because Sharon was marketing and international television distribution and all that. But somehow, from what I remember, and this was a minute ago, it was really Sharon Sadello working with the Turner Broadcasting production team. Because Turner Broadcasting did this. Our team did not produce it. It was produced by Turner, but it was Sharon, I believe, who was coordinating a lot of it.
When you talk about your role 30 years ago and early 1994, would you have had to approve something like that, or was this something along the lines of, here, Eric, this is what we're going to be running on the next Saturday night?
No, this is a perfect example, Derek, of the kind of things that I was overseeing. Now, again, we didn't produce it. It was determined that it should be produced by Turner because they had the capabilities of doing things that we couldn't do in-house in our production facility. I'd be remiss, though. We're looking at Nick Bockwinkel, if you're watching along with us. Nick Bockwinkel, I brought him in because of basically me being a fan of his back when I was 16, 17, 18 years old as a kid in AWA, and I just always loved Nick Bockwinkel's work. He was so good on the mic. He was amazing in the ring, but he was equally amazing on the mic. And this was a role as the commissioner, I guess we gave him that role, one that he really would have excelled at. And of course, Bobby Heenan.
If you have not seen Nick Bockwinkel and Bobby Heenan promos from the AWA from the 70s and the 80s, they are a sight to be seen. There is no better classic heel, in my opinion, than Nick Bockwinkel. He elevated everyone with his words, his actions. We talk about a lot of things that just happened for no reason. There was never no reason behind anything Nick Bockwinkel did.
No, he was smooth as silk and so believable, but he was so articulate and he knew his character. It was hard not to hate him and admire him at the same time. It was crazy. And if you really want to go back and see some amazing in-ring work, I mean, stellar, that would still hold up today in any organization, go back and watch some Kurt Hennig and Nick Bockwinkel matchups back when Kurt was really a rookie. I mean, that's what sealed the deal for me and Nick Bockwinkel, man. I became a lifelong Nick Bockwinkel fan as a result of those Kurt Hennig, Nick Bockwinkel matches.
What was it like to have to reach out to Nick Bockwinkel to bring him into WCW? Because he was I believe he was at the time just out of the WWF as an agent. And I think it was about a year removed by the time he made his way into WCW. Was it an easy phone call, or did you have to sell him hard on coming into WCW?
That's a really good question, Derek. It was easy in the sense that I was offering an opportunity, and that takes the pressure off, right?
Sure.
But it was subconsciously because I looked at Nick differently because I was such a huge fan. And
Sure.
I don't want to say in awe, but I had so much respect for them for him that I felt awkward, even though I was offering him, significant amount of money and opportunity.
Sure.
I had a case of imposter syndrome, I think. That's probably the best way to say it. It was just, I felt out of place, but I was excited. And I think honestly for Nick, I can look back at it now and understand how he felt, but I think there was just a little bit of, I can't believe I'm working for this kid. Because, in the AWA, I was like, oh, do you guys need me to go out and get you some pizzas?
Yep.
You need me to, clean up the studio, whatever you need. I was like a gopher. And I had a job. I sold syndication, I did all that stuff. But I think for Nick, at his age, and I can understand this now, I probably have a better view of it now. Really, I understand it better. It was probably a little tough on Nick to have to work for the kid.
The kid, I'm sure, 30 years ago, and we're watching something that I don't know if you realize or our fans realize, that is Scott D'Amore.
Whoa, Scotty's getting his ass whooped by the Nasty Boys. To add insult to injury, there's that Missy Hyatt outside the ring.
It is Missy Hyatt outside the ring, but Scott D'Amore, the leader of Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling, former executive for TNA, Impact, Take Your Name, Alliteration, Global Force Wrestling. Talk about what a difference 30 years makes for Scott D'Amore from getting the boot to the face from Knobs there, from Sags, to being where he's at now. Have you had any communication with Scott recently regarding his launch of a new promotion?
No, I haven't. We flirted with the idea of getting Scott on to Wise Choices and talk. And I think it's a good idea. It's just, a matter of scheduling and timing. I've been pretty busy all summer, so we're starting to settle down now. And I don't plan on traveling too much between now and the end of the year. So I'd love to get Scott on, talk about what happened in TNA. It's still kind of a mystery a little bit, at least to me, because I don't spend a lot of time digging into this stuff. But I'd like to talk to Scott, and more importantly, talk about what he's doing. I'm very interested.
He's done a little bit of the media rounds, and knowing Scott a little bit from working with him at Ric Flair's last match, he has taken it seems like the high road in a lot of ways, and he's not out there to bury everyone on his quote unquote way out.
Then fuck him. Who wants to talk to him now?
He speaks very eloquently and professionally about the business. He did a great interview with Chris Van Vliet maybe about a month ago regarding the launch, announcing Mauro Ranallo is going to be part of his commentary team. He's got a lot of great talent he's bringing in. You can see there's some overlap between some of the TNA talents or Impact talents, or I don't even TNA. I go back and forth on calling that what it is. So he's got some exciting stuff going on. He would be a very interesting guest on Wise Choices, I feel like.
I wonder, we'll do that. We'll definitely arrange that. Do you have a relationship with Scott?
I do. I'd be happy to reach out and we can.
Let's set that up. We'll do it right here for ad free and for Wise Choices. This looks like this is center stage, right? Yeah.
This is absolutely center stage at its finest, and that looks like the 1, 2, 3, the Nasty Boys with the victory over, and the person we did not mention is Matt Shepard, along with Scott D'Amore for the 1, 2, 3. Now earlier, because we're not playing audio, obviously, because of copyright issues, Nick Bockwinkel announced that the boss, the former Big Boss Man, Ray Traylor, will be the referee for the Super Brawl rematch between Ric Flair and Vader. And we're going to be going to the Nature Boy in minutes, if not seconds, after this replay to cut the promo to get ready for it, as we are in the last 2-week build of Super Brawl. Ric Flair's return in 93, necessitated by the fact that Sid and Arn got into a bit of a tussle in England, brought back brought back Rick at his top in North Carolina, the first retirement stipulation that really meant something for Ric Flair. Johnny B. Bad, the quintessential character in WCW, is on our screen right now. He will be in action later on. When you look at Flair, Vader, two guys that don't seem like they would be able to mesh well in the ring together, two different styles, but they were such good workers, and the way they were able to just come together, it's one of the more underrated pairings, I feel like, in the early 90s, because everyone remembers Sting and Vader, Flair and Steamboat, Flair and really anybody, but Flair Vader seems to be super underrated. Do you think it's just the tone of their matches and how?
Hey, there's Ted Turner and there's Bill Shaw, the guy that gave me the opportunity.
There is Ted Turner, which is part of the reasons we're watching this episode. Ted in the stands for WCW Saturday Night, and there he is, the Nature Boy.
All right, y'all, it's time to cash in on these basketball playoffs with Prize Picks. Don't miss your last chance to add your favorite players from the court to your Prize Picks lineup. Whether it's points, rebounds, assists, take your pick of more or less for your shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash today. I have absolutely had a blast with Prize Picks this basketball season, but is there anything better than NBA playoffs? Everybody's paying attention, well, except maybe the Celtics. But if you feel like you're down big, Prize Picks can help you do it. Hey, I don't know if they can help the Celtics, but they can help me and you. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in more than 30 states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. And the app is really easy to use. To create a lineup, all you got to do is pick more or less on a few player stats for your shot up to win 2,000 times your money. Prize Picks truly is the best way to win cash while watching sports. Join millions of users and sign up today. I'm such a big believer in this. Everybody I know is using it, and it's no wonder. I mean, it's so easy to get started. Prize Picks offers Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more for quick and easy deposits into your accounts this sports season. And you can sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win in order to receive that $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. And I am having a blast this season. I know you will too, especially right here during the playoffs. Like tonight, the Pacers are going to be in action. Do you think that Miles Turner is going to have more or less than 20 points? Do you think Halliburton is going to have more or less than 8 rebounds? That's all you got to think about, and bam, you're locked in. It's so much fun. It makes the NBA playoffs even more fun. I'm a big believer in it. I want you to try it. Go download the app today and use the code 83weeks. You'll get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code 83weeks where you get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game.
That was so cool having Ted come down. And, you know, Ted had attended a few WCW events. He would bring Jane with him. It was always, because you'd see Ted around the CNN Center quite often. It wasn't unusual at all. In fact, his parking space at the CNN Center was like 6 parking spaces away from mine. I don't know how I ended up with such a good parking spot. They were assigned, but every once in a while I'd pull in about the same time Ted was, and you'd get a look at him. And Ted was such a down to earth guy. He was everyman, and he never carried himself like some executives that I've worked for have, But he drove a Ford Taurus.
Really?
Here's a guy that's one of the wealthiest media moguls in the world, largest landowner in America, and he drove a dark blue Ford Taurus, which I thought was really cool. I think
that's amazing.
That probably said more about Ted Turner too. He didn't have a driver. He drove himself, and he had a dark blue. I had a nicer car than Ted Turner did.
I'm not kidding you. I was literally about to ask you, what car were you driving at the time, and the fact that Ted Turner was driving
I think at the time I had a Corvette.
Okay.
And I felt like such a nerd whenever I'd see Ted. It's like, oh God, come on, Eric. But I liked the Corvette. It was fun.
It's funny because I was just talking to someone the other day. I work in the Penske Corporation. I've met Roger Penske before, and Roger has 2 or 3 drivers, 2 or 3 pilots on demand whenever he's ready to make a move around any of his dealerships in the country. And I remember chatting with his driver one time, and his driver was like, listen, I make $1 million, but I never see my family. But it doesn't matter to me because at the end of the day, they're taken care of. And 20 years, I'll be done and be home with my family. And I always found that philosophy fascinating. The ability to set up your family for the future weighs above being with them. I understand $1 million is $1 million a year, but he is on call what feels like 24/7. He has an East Coast, a Central, and a West Coast driver. And I thought that was very fascinating having that conversation with him. And
it is. I mean, and that it takes a lot of it's a unique individual that can make a commitment 20 years down the road, 15 years down the road, and the sacrifice of being away from your family. You can't get that time back. Your kids are never going to be that age and that day or for that birthday or that holiday or that school recital or that soccer game. Those moments come and they go and they don't ever come back.
Yeah.
And that's a big commitment. I don't know that I'm strong enough to make it. I've often thought about that. You know, what would I do if I was presented with, even today?
Yeah.
I've been presented with opportunities in the last year and a half or 2 years that would require time away because of where I live. And
Sure.
I can't do it anymore. I won't do it anymore. And part of it is because, you know, I'm almost 70 years old. There's only so much time left on the clock and I want to maximize it. So
I can only
be in your 20s or 30s or 40s and say, okay, I'm going to see my family in 20 years. It's like, whoa, that's a big one.
I can only hope to look as good as you when I get to my 70s, because it's every time you say that out loud, it's astounding to me that you're almost 70.
Well, that's why you should be listening to 83 Meats. I got involved in all of this. By the way, I've gone down into this nutritional rabbit hole because I'm getting to the age I am. And because I've got a new grandson and I want to be around, I want to be active. I don't want to just be sitting on a park bench drooling on myself, watching my kid play at a beach, or my grandson. I want to be out there doing stuff. So there's only one way to do it, and that's nutrition. And that's what 83 Meats is all about.
I'm very much looking forward to the launch of that and continuing to get hungrier as I smell food and we discuss it. So
Johnny B. Who's Johnny in there with her? Who's that big man?
That is not Johnny B. Bad. That is Jungle Jim.
Oh, that's Jungle Jim. Oh, I'm so sorry, Johnny. I saw that hair flying around for a second out of the corner of my eye. Yeah, Jungle Jim.
There's a shot coming up, I believe we'll see, of Mr. Turner and Jane Fonda in the crowd enjoying.
She was hot, right?
She was there.
I mean, she's smoking.
I'm so glad. I'm getting good at this timing thing. I'm so glad that queued up exactly at the right moment for that. But there's got to be something different and backstage for the boys, knowing that Ted Turner's sitting in the crowd. Like, does everybody amp it up a little bit? Everybody's got to turn it on a little bit more, knowing the boss and his wife is sitting front row, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, it was exciting for a lot of people. You know, a lot of the wrestling talent, you know, those of us who worked in the office and in CNN Center, we would see Ted on a fairly frequent basis, even if it's just walking across the atrium or down in the food court or whatever, right? On his way in and out. So it wasn't unusual for us to see him. But talent very rarely got a chance to see Ted. And Ted loved hanging out with the talent. You know, he loved meeting people. He loved socializing. And he was just like a fan. He was very much a fan.
Speaking of a fan, there's Mean Gene sitting front row, sitting next to Ted and Jane looks like she has no idea what is going on.
Look at all those suits and ties sitting there. You know, Ted's not wearing a tie, but everybody else is.
I like the idea of like the fans elsewhere being the people you pull in, and like, you know, we all remember the stories of how WCW sometimes had to fill center stage and pay to get people in there and the models and all this. And then you had the regular fans, but Ted Turner sitting there with a kid in the background eating popcorn is quintessential 1994 WCW to me. Is it not?
And it is. I miss Ted. You know, Teddy Turner, Ted's son, was a part of the series that Rock produced and his company, $7 Productions for Vice, Who Killed WCW. And I saw Teddy Turner, and he looks exactly. Teddy and I became, I don't want to say good friends, but we became very friendly and had lunch together several times and just shoot shit. Teddy loved wrestling too. And I saw Teddy, and I'm going to reach out to Teddy here in another month or so and see if I could take a trip up to Bozeman. And you know, it's a long shot, but hopefully get to see Ted.
Yeah. One of my favorite episodes we've done within the last year, and I'm pretty sure it's within the last year, was the Ted Turner episode of 83 Weeks, which is available in the archives here at AfriShows.com. By far, to hear what you feel and still believe in with Ted, I think is one of the funnest parts of doing the show sometimes, is that you get to reflect and go through, and perceptions probably haven't changed on Ted Turner, but just the difference in reality from what you were going through at the time to where you are at your life now, I think is one of my favorite parts of doing 83 Weeks and the show and the evolution of it as well, starting from the beginning to where we are now. Almost, I think we're over 5 years now. 19. Yeah, we're over 5 years now.
Yeah, we're 5.5, probably going on 6 years, and probably 300 plus episodes, probably 700 hours of content. The show we did last week, which by the way, you did the research on, you did a phenomenal job. 4 hours and 22 minutes. And what's funny, Derek, was we sat down and went, okay, we got quite a few, this time of year, fourth quarter, you get a lot of advertisers. Thank goodness, because we wouldn't be doing the show without them.
Right.
I know sometimes people complain, and that's why we have ad-free shows, because if you don't want to sit through, 9 spots and 9 reads, even though we have fun doing them, and we have some really great products and great sponsors. But if you're not in the mood to listen to that, you can come over to ad-free shows. But we said, man, maybe we could get 2.5 hours out of this. If we have to, we'll try to get to 3. Man, we were at 4 hours. We're as excited as we were at the beginning of the show. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah. David Bixenspan actually has been helping us with the research as well for ad-free shows. So he contributed a lot to that as well. It's fascinating to look at the end of creative, because we've talked in the past about when you were sent home. To me, something that was untapped that we haven't discussed is the end of the creative stream that you had going on at that point in time. And it's something we've never really delved into. We've delved into the backstage issues. We've delved into Raven walking out in bits and pieces. But to go in the length that you guys were able to go, not just about current events, but at the end of your run there, was telling to me that it's something that feels like it really hasn't come off your chest up into that point. And I thought it was, I'm still only 3 hours into the show. I haven't even finished it yet. So
the best part, the last hour is really the best part.
Yeah. So if you haven't checked it out, this is the bonus accompaniment to it for ad-free shows this week. But make sure you do not miss that episode. It is 4 hours of goodness. Eric and Conrad at their finest. We just came across the control center where Gene is right now plugging Super Brawl. One of the things you'll notice is that the Nasty Boys are cutting a promo on the infamous Cactus Jack and Max Payne. What wasn't there was Missy Hyatt. Missy Hyatt was missing because she had quit the company in between the taping of the show and the go home for Super Brawl. Following a lawsuit.
She quit. Didn't I fire her?
So that is the question I'm about to ask. The story that Missy tells is that she quit and filed a lawsuit. The other story is you launched her ass. So what is the
I fired her. She turned into a complete bitch. We were at the Disney MGM studios. It was one of the first times we were taping down there. And I brought in Sherry Martel. Now, up until this point, Missy was like the only, Terry Reynolds was in and out a little bit, but Missy was the only, I think one of the only women that we had, certainly the one that got most attention and used more frequently on television. And when we're at the Disney MGM studios, and it's much like Center Stage. It's a very small, sound stage isn't a big, hey, Steven Regal. This is right after he just came in. Missy saw Sherry and just went ballistic. You bringing it. Why is she here? What is she doing here? She just went batshit crazy. And not to me privately, I could have dealt with that. It's no big deal. But in front of people, it was just like, see ya, you're out of here. And then, the lawsuit came as a retaliation, and that was a joke. I do want to point out here, in addition to getting excited about seeing Steven Regal, I love his work. Centers Del Wilkes in there, I believe that's Del.
Yeah, this is actually the debut of Del Wilkes. There is a lot of talent coming aboard. Jungle Jim Steele, actually, that was his debut on TV as well.
Yeah, and Del Wilkes, unfortunately, left us a couple of years ago, I believe. But yeah, and I love Steven Regal's work. And when you hear Steven Regal's story, when you learn about the way he came up, and at such a young age, the amount of work that he got early on, and people that trained him, and wrestling in the sand pits in India, and just such cool shit, you can have nothing but respect. It's really quite cool.
He was one of my favorite people to talk to when we did the very short-term Gentleman Villain, and a lot of the questions I had for him when we were talking about show topics and how do you want your research framed, the first thing he said to me on the bat is, I don't do anything with dirt sheets. Don't bring up dirt sheets. Don't bring up rumor, innuendo. I don't deal with it. And then he went right into the next line of, but no one ever knows that I'm the guy who broke up the Great Khali Big Show fight. And I was like, okay, that's what we're looking
That's
for.
the subject.
That's what I want. Give me that. And he's like, yeah, but I don't want to talk about that. And I'm like, I hear you, but like, that's like, we don't know your perspective on things. We don't know what was going on backstage. The whole point of this is to disprove a lot of the narrative that's been out there. So feel free to get involved and talk about that. I don't want to talk about that. I'm like, I got it.
He's a very traditional,
Yes,
professional wrestler. There's so many stories, so many things that Steve was either involved in or witnessed firsthand that would make great conversation, but Steve will go to his grave with it. He's just not that guy. And you can't help but respect that.
All right, man, you sign up for something and then you forget about it after the trial period ends, and then you're charged month after month after month. Does that sound familiar? We've all done it. The subscriptions are there, but you're not actually using them. In fact, I just learned that like 85% of people have at least one paid subscription going unused each month. Yeah, I was guilty. But now, thanks to Rocket Money, I can see all of my subscriptions in one place and cancel the ones I'm not using anymore. And now I'm saving more money, and you will be too. Now, I signed up for this years ago, actually during the pandemic, and I didn't realize that my wife and I, well, we had signed up for a bunch of streaming apps we don't even need anymore. And I guess we never really needed it. She signed up for the service, and I did too. Yeah, the same service. But we don't watch TV apart. We watch television together. So we didn't need two accounts. But without Rocket Money, we wouldn't have known. She thought we were using her account. I thought we were using my account. We never used hers. Now we're keeping more of our own money, and it's all because of Rocket Money. By the way, Rocket Money does a whole lot more than that. But they are a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions. But they'll also help you monitor your spending and then even help you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. With Rocket Money, you see all those subscriptions in one place, so you know exactly to the penny where your money is going. And for the ones you don't want anymore, well, Rocket Money will even help you cancel them. Rocket Money has a dashboard that gives you a clear view of your expenses across all of your accounts. They'll help you easily create a personalized budget with custom categories to help you keep your spending on track. You can even see your monthly spending trends in a category, so you know exactly where your money's going. You can also get alerts if your bills are going to increase in price, maybe there's unusual spending activity, or if you're close to going over your budget. They even have a new goals feature that automatically saves money for you, so you don't have to think about it. You can pay off your credit card debt, put away money for a house, or just build your savings. Rocket Money makes it easy. Rocket Money will even try to negotiate to lower your bills for you. They automatically scan your bills to find opportunities to save, and then you can ask them to negotiate. Yeah, they deal with customer service, so you don't have to. Rocket Money has over 5 million users, and they've saved folks over $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when you use all of the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go right now to rocketmoney.com/83weeks today. That's rocketmoney.com/83weeks.
He's done more in the evolution of this business in the last 5 years, I feel like, and is super underrated in that, from being high up in WWE, from walking into AEW and doing what he did, putting together Blackpool Combat Club, taking the time to work with some of the talent, then going back to WWE and continuing to have a presence there. He's been through a lot in the last 5 years, and I think the business is better because of it.
He is. And I'll tell you what, I talked to Steve about this, and he'll never say this, but I will. I think one of the things that frustrated Steve in AEW was that talent just wasn't interested in what he had to teach or what he had to share or his observations. It just didn't care. It's almost like they would pay lip service and they would be respectful and polite and nod their heads, and then they would go on about their business and wrestle like a couple of backyard high schoolers, and they just didn't care. And I think that was really hard on Steve. And I think the opportunity to go back and work at WWE, specifically at NXT, with people that are hungry for his type of knowledge. When I'm not going to share details about this particular aspect, but when Steve would go, on that interview, he would go into great detail about some of the things that he was working with not only the younger talent, but main event Raw, SmackDown talent who wanted to perfect the littlest details. And that's where Steve's teaching ability and experience, and because he came from a different style of wrestling, those details, those little tiny details, when you add them together in the aggregate, make everything look so much more believable. And when I listen to
As
Steve
we're watching
tell it,
right now with the top wrist lock with the Patriot.
and he's making it work. Like, you believe that. You
Yep.
believe he's struggling. And I bet you, since this was Patriot's first match, this is Steve Regal wrestling himself. He's calling the match, and he's putting himself in positions where he knows he can sell, and he's selling something he knows his opponent can execute and make look believable. Just so, I could talk about Steve Regal all for an hour. He's so amazing.
Now, one of the major things, and take it from someone who's been in the ring before, the heels call the match. So when you got Regal in the ring with a debuting babyface, he knows exactly what he needs to be doing to find his hope spots, to find the transitions, to make the crowd believe in him. Because at this point, Patriot's never been on WCW TV before. So now his goal is to get him as over as possible, make him look as good as possible, struggling with the side headlock as we speak on the mat, at the same time knowing what times to pick and choose when to give him that hope spot. Del has an amazing look. He's a couple years out of his All Japan run at this point. But when you look at it, right now he's just an American babyface. But by the end of this, he's already got the crowd invested. They're already cheering along with what he's got going on. And that starts with Regal in the beginning of that match, setting the tone. And now here's Regal going to take advantage and cut him off and take back control. And this is how babyface and heel work.
And the other thing is, you have to believe. I actually knew Del Wilkes from AWA. I had met and worked with Del prior to this evening. So Del had some experience,
sure,
but he was still fairly green.
Right.
And you've got to know, coming to a new company, being on national television for the first time, WCW Saturday Night was kind of a big deal at the time. And interestingly enough, the ratings were pretty competitive with WWE, which I didn't even realize that till about a year ago. I went back and looked.
We're going to get
into
that.
Know that Del was really nervous, right?
Sure.
And nerves can make you screw shit up faster than anything else. I guarantee you, Steve Regal was telling him, slow down.
Yep.
Let me take you through. Let me follow my lead. Slow down. I bet you that was 90% of the conversation.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the great things at ringside, Sir William. Now, if you don't know who Sir William is, you will probably recognize the name that's about to come out of my mouth if you've listened to my world, and it's Bill Dundee. Bill Dundee is a renowned booker, wrestler coming up in the Memphis territory, working with the likes of Jerry Lawler, Jackie Fargo. But when you look at him at ringside, he is not what you imagine from Memphis, Tennessee. He is Sir William, top hat, umbrella. He added so much to this gimmick without really ever talking, because he couldn't talk in his Memphis accent as an Englishman. But knowing the crowd, knowing how to get them going, knowing when to shut them up and knowing when to perk them up for the babyface. The business has changed in 30 years, and I understand that. But there is a space for wrestlers with managers that can do this, is there not?
There is. And one of the things that I liked about Bill Dundee as a manager, particularly in this case, is he wasn't trying to be the star. That's the one big bitch I have about managers in the more modern era, is it's all about them. And they're trying to get themselves over.
Right.
And announcers have a tendency sometimes to do the same thing. It's all about trying to get themselves over. They want to read, good things about themselves, on the internet after a pay-per-view or whatever. And Bill Dundee was old school in the sense that he knew his job was to help get Regal over when Regal needed it. When Regal didn't need any help, like in the middle of a match like this, you barely saw Dundee. And that's what a manager should be. They should be the garnish on a plate. You should only notice them, kind of like a referee. There's some wrestling companies where the referees actually want to be the star of the match. Doesn't work very well. It's distracting, particularly when the referees are kind of horseshit referees to begin with. The more you see of them, the less you should see of them. Dundee understood that. and he was there to get his partner over, not himself.
One of my favorite parts of this match, because I did watch this episode a couple of days ago to be prepared for it, is the way Regal plays to the ringside camera. As a producer, sitting backstage, having the ability to be able to cut from the wide shot hard camera down to the ringside cam as we see right now, it makes life a hell of a lot easier to provide a compelling product. And as a producer, you have to be sitting back there going, man, this guy gets it. He knows what he's doing. And again, Regal has not been on TV for a very long time at this point, but to get that nuance already speaks worlds of him as a performer.
Absolutely does. And Nick Patrick, of course, probably one of the better referees of this era.
Agreed.
And Randy Anderson, both, the talent really loved working with, they called him Pee-wee, Randy Anderson. They loved him because he'd been around, he'd been up and down the roads. There was some really strong relationships, but you knew that Randy would always be in the right place at the right time, and you could rely on him for the things you needed to rely upon a referee for. You know more about that than I do, actually. You've done it. It's referees, they're an important part of the show, and the best ones are the ones that you barely notice, like a manager. You don't really notice them until you need them.
Spring is in the air, the weather is warming up, and I'm looking forward to getting out on the boat. We're going to have long days out there, and, that means I'm going to need some Mando whole body deodorant. Because unlike the other deodorants I've tried, Mando can actually handle anything. And I'm a big believer in this product. You've seen me brag about it for a long time. They've got a bunch of different, I always want to call them flavors, but I'm not eating the deodorant. They've got a great variety of scents. They've got bourbon leather, clover woods, Mount Fuji, or Pro Sport. They really do have something for everybody with Mando. So let's say you like solid stick deodorant. Well, no problem. Mando's got you hooked up. You see, their formula has mandelic acid, and that's going to allow you to stop odor before it even starts. But Dave Silva's favorite is the spray deodorant. It's aluminum free, and it's ideal for those hard to reach places. And when we say places, we mean all your places. Mando's whole body deodorant is truly safe to use anywhere on your body. You want to put it in your armpits like everybody else? No problem. But boy, we can get creative here. You want to lift and separate? We got you there too. Yeah, your balls, your thigh folds, your belly buttons, your butt cracks, even your smelly ass feet. Mando can tackle it all. Because Mando was created by a doctor who saw firsthand how normal BO was being misdiagnosed and mistreated. Fun fact, the creator actually went to school with Eric Bischoff. Now, I can't confirm that his nuts stank so bad that she felt compelled to create Mando and make it her life's work, but it makes for a fun story, doesn't it? Mando has been clinically proven to block odor all day long and control it for up to 72 hours, brother. And all the Mando products are baking soda free and they're paraben free. And Mando has been clinically proven to control odor better than just a shower with soap alone. And I am a true believer in this product. I was talking to Double J and the Queen, Karen Jarrett, the other day, and they say this is a go-to for Cody. It has changed his world. Maybe they had some issues beforehand, but Mando and their 72-hour odor control has made everyone a little more pleasant up there on the Tennessee River. And if you're ready to start and try America's #1 whole body deodorant formula right now, well, you're in luck. You can find Mando in Walmart, Target, and other retailers across the country. But for the best deals and to help support our show, go right now to shopmando.com. That's where you'll find Mando's starter pack, and it truly is perfect for new customers. It comes with that solid stick deodorant, the cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice. I recommend the mini body wash and deodorant wipes, and free shipping. Now, as a special offer for our listeners, new customers can get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That's like 40% off your starter pack when you use our code 83weeks at shopmando.com. That's shopmando.com. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. It's shopmando.com. Smell fresher, stay drier, and boost your confidence from head to toe with Mando.
Now, for those of you who are watching along with us, you can see the crowd reacting to all these near falls. And the reason why they're doing it is because this is a television title match with a 10-minute time limit. So they know the clock is rolling. And the psychology behind the Patriot trying to get as many falls as possible to give himself a chance to win. Great storytelling, classic storytelling. You see the crowd into it. You see Nick Patrick getting down there to make sure the shoulders are there. The women in the crowd are losing their minds. And that is one of the first high impact bumps. And we talk about bumps that mean something. That bump meant something. And the near fall reaction, even though you can't hear the audio, you see the crowd, they are astonished now. And there's Bill Dundee milking more time. Little heel stuff. Just
pulling. And when he pulled the ref, now again, you'll appreciate this more than I will, really, but or at least as much. When Nick Patrick pulled the ref, it was subtle. It was fast. It was subtle, and it looked real. It didn't look like stagecraft. You know, and again, he didn't draw a lot of attention to himself. And another thing I want to point out before we get to Stone Cold Steve Austin, back when he had hair, holy smokes, this is old. Is there's a lot of women in that crowd. You know, usually when you look at a wide shot at a wrestling event, even today, it's more of a testicle festival.
Yep.
This was, you had about 40% women there, which is, you know, pretty unusual for wrestling, especially WCW back in the day.
I am now trying to figure out how we put Testicle Festival on a t-shirt. I don't know if I can do it, but I'm going to try my hardest because that is one of the funniest lines I've heard in a long time. Regal and Patriot went to a 10-minute draw. Again, I bring up the fact that there was only one high-impact bump in that match. It was the finish. It was right when the bell rang. 10 minutes of just classic babyface heel mat work to get to one bump, almost Honky Tonk Man-esque, with only taking one bump in a match. And it meant something. And I know I sound like an old man when I say this. It meant something. And it's okay to mean just something instead of just bumping all the time.
You know, you say that, Derek, and I agree with you 100%. But what I kind of bristle about just a bit is the idea that if someone like you or me or some 20-year-old notices the art of selling, notices the art of, oh my God.
What in the hell is
what
this?
the Fiazuk is this?
It is the Mongolian Mauler.
Who did this? Who was booking this?
I'm not going to take credit for it.
Let's not talk about that.
No.
Good. This is crazy. But my point before I lose it, because this is crazy shit we're watching here, is those little details are as relevant, important, and should be considered as much today as they were back then. It's one of the things that's missing is the believability and the emotional aspect of professional wrestling, particularly in AEW. I'm just going to come out and say it. Shit happens so fast, and it's so unrelated to a real confrontation that you can't get emotionally invested. You can sit back and go, holy shit, that was crazy. I can't believe they did that. Whoa, wow, what an athlete. You can do that a lot. But you can't make that emotional connection, which is why I think AEW is struggling. They're not creating emotion. They're creating action. It's a little bit like going to an action movie and it's a 90-minute car chase. You don't know who's chasing who. You don't know why anybody's chasing each other. The car crashes are cool. Like the special effects and shit. Oh, Tara, here's that kid that look at him. Triple H.
The original
first big break.
Incarnation of Terror Rising. TERROR. I actually thought it was a really good name.
It's a good gimmick.
But the debut of Triple H coming out, working with Keith Cole. But when you talk about 30 years later, here is Hunter Hearst Helmsley, Paul Levesque, walking into center stage for his first big break. Was this probably the first time you met him at a center stage taping, or did you meet with him during contract negotiations, or is that handled with someone different?
I think I met him. He might have come in for a tryout. I don't remember the circumstances. I know Terry Taylor was really big on Paul. Paul was training, I think, with Killer Kowalski.
Correct.
And Paul really wanted to end up he wanted a shot in WWF.
Sure.
That's what he really wanted. But he knew he had to transition. He wasn't going to get a shot just to walk in through the door. And somehow Terry Taylor discovered him. I'm sure Paul sent in videotape or whatever. Man, he looks good.
Yeah.
I see why Terry Taylor thought so highly of him. But I had a couple conversations with Paul over the phone. This was at a time when WCW was cutting costs. At
Right.
this point in time in 1994, I was trying to reduce our roster size, and I prioritized people that lived in the Atlanta area. Those that lived outside Atlanta that had a high travel expense associated with them, they kind of went down to the lower end of the list, not because they had less talent or they were less, but we just couldn't afford them.
Economics.
I was making people count pencils in their desks.
Sure.
So we had to really cut costs. And I remember the conversation with Paul, and I think I offered him 75 grand, which sounds like a lot of money back then, but when you have to pay your own expenses,
right,
not so much.
Yeah.
And I said, Paul, I don't take this the wrong way, but you're a good. He said, what's a good? I said, geographically undesirable. You're too, unless you want to move down here, I can't
right.
fly back and forth. And he did, to his credit.
And to his credit, he's 25 at this point. So that is a life change. That is dedication to the business. That is finding a way to make yourself desirable and getting an opportunity and not missing out on it. And you look at him at 25, and it's, again, say this because I'm dating myself. He's 55 now because we're 30 years later. It's amazing the evolution from the guy who, here he is, fiery white meat babyface, trying to get the crowd up, to doing what he does now. It's an amazing evolution.
You know what? I want to say this about Paul before this match is over. One of the things that I know, and Paul was friends with Diamond Dallas Page.
Mm-hmm.
They were close. And as a result of that, I saw more of Paul sometimes than I did of other people, because
Sure.
Paul associated with people that I was somewhat close to. I don't want to say this in a disparaging way, but a lot of the talent, I would say 70% of the talent, were making, relatively speaking, really good money. They're in their 20s, they're in their 30s, they're partying. It's
Sure.
the lifestyle. It's rock and roll on the road. It is what it is. Wrestling's always been that way. Paul wasn't that way. Paul
Right.
didn't drink. I'll
Right.
never forget going, I think it was a Christmas party at Diamond Dallas Page's house. He literally lived one house away from me. And DDP loved Christmas, still does to this day. His house you could see it from a space shuttle.
I've seen the pictures.
Right? It's nuts. He's always been that way. And I went over to his Christmas party, and it was what you would expect a wrestling Christmas party
Sure.
to be like. I think there was a fight. Somebody got their head run through a wall, whatever. I think it was Van Hammer got his head run through a wall. Might have been. Got his ass kicked. I know that. But there's Paul in the corner, glass of water, bottle of water, just observing. He's sociable. He was fun to be around.
Right.
But even then, man, no drugs, no alcohol, and he just studied shit. He
wanted it.
Everything.
He wanted it. He got the win right here with an Indian Deathlock variation on Keith Cole. Impressive debut. Wasn't in the wrong spot at any point in time. Looked good.
25 years old, fresh out of the oven in terms of wrestling and Killer Kowalski's school. Very, very limited experience, and he's wrestling like he's been in the business for 10 years.
Yeah. Speaking of, and by the way, amazing hair. I can't lose sight of that.
That part's pissing me off. He actually had better hair back then than I did, which is fucking rare.
Yeah, it's not like you can't. It's not fair to have genetics and good hair. Like you really should only get one of them, and he's got both of them, and it's.
But have you seen his nose? His nose kind of makes up for
fair.
the hair.
I mean, listen, you can't get everything. It's like, people that hit the lottery after, being born in a rich family, it's just too much. But that, the nose offsets. I won't disagree with that. Speaking of people who inherited something, we have a major match coming up next. Pretty wonderful. Paul Roma and Paul Orndorff taking on the Enforcer, Arn Anderson, and Eric Watts. I've always said Eric has gotten such a bad rap just for being the son of Cowboy Bill Watts. And if given an opportunity and not being the promoter's son or the Cowboy's son, he had the size. He got going at some point to be not a bad wrestler. I know he didn't have a lot of charisma, but he could have been a solid hand at some point. And I just think it just wouldn't.
There's Dirty Dick Cheatham.
That's Dick
Dirty
Cheatham.
Dick Cheatham. He was in charge of all finances for not only WCW, but the Atlanta Braves, and I think the Hawks, and a number of things. He oversaw all the finances of a number of Turner divisions, including WCW, and he was one of our biggest fans, still is to this day.
Hold on. Dick Cheatham's wearing a polo shirt in the front row.
Yeah.
Wow.
He did not care. To this day, I talked to Paul last time we had our Top Guy weekend in Huntsville, and Dick was there, and he's telling me about the independent shows that he goes to down where he lives in Georgia. He goes to indie shows. He loves wrestling.
That's awesome.
It really is. I don't think I've ever met anybody with more passion for wrestling than Dick Cheatham.
That's great. I don't even know what we were talking about now, that knowing that's Dick Cheatham.
We're talking about Eric Watts.
Eric Watts.
And being born into the Bill Watts family. And I agree with you. You know, anytime you see a second generation or third generation wrestler get an opportunity, please make a special note that talent it's so much harder for that talent to make it than it is for somebody with no connections at all. People think, oh yeah, your dad got you the job. Yeah, my son went through it.
Sure.
Yeah, I got him the job. My son got an opportunity to work in TNA that he would not have been able to get had it not been for me. That's a fact. No reason to lie about it or try to hide it. But it also made it twice as hard on him. And the same was true for Eric Watts, especially because Bill Watts is such a dick. Right. Everybody hated Bill. Bill had no friends other than Jim Ross. And I'm not sure Jim really liked him. I think Jim had to pretend he did. And Jim liked him. Jim had respect for Bill. I'm just being a dick. But
it's heat by proxy.
Bill was such a negative, and the heat that Bill Watts had in the locker room. A lot of talent tried to not associate that with Eric, but it's just hard.
Right.
It's just hard.
When you go through, again, the toilings on the indies, and you finally get signed to the big deal, and here's a good-looking kid who is the son of the promoter, you're going to feel some resentment. And I think that resentment nowadays has really gone away. You see the Cody Rhodes, second generation star. You see Randy Orton, third generation star. Randy didn't have it easy in the beginning. Did he get a lot of breaks? He did. Cody also decided to go find his own break, which is so commendable. Was never trying to be Dusty's kid. Did it on his own. Figured it out on his own. Did whatever he had to do to earn it. If you want to shit on the people who are lazy and are trying to do it based upon their parents or their family's name, do that. But don't give them the shit before they haven't even gotten started. It's an unfair bias. It is heat by proxy. And Watts, for being a kid, wasn't terrible at the time. And you're in there with Paul Roma is a good wrestler, but you're in there with two of the best, with Paul Orndorff and Arn Anderson. And if you watch this match, as we're going to, he knows where to be. He's in the right spots. He's not doing anything wrong.
I think one of the things that I'm impressed with right here the most is, look, Eric doesn't have a typical, particularly for this period of time, early mid-90s, he doesn't have a quote-unquote wrestler's physique.
Right.
He's just a big kid. He's a big farm kid is what he looks like. And he's got legs. I mean, he's like a freaking gazelle.
Yeah.
And he's so long-legged that he looks slower than he really is, because he's actually quite a big dude. When you're that long-legged, it's kind of hard, I think.
Yeah.
I would imagine it is. I've never done it, so I don't know. But I would imagine it's kind of hard in there when you're in there with guys who are shorter than you, faster than you.
Yep.
The footwork is a big part of what goes on inside of the ring. And when you got legs like a freaking giraffe, it's got to make it a little more challenging. Especially he's in there with a guy, Paul Roma is about my size. I mean, height, not my size, but my height. It's awkward, to say the least.
And Paul's not going to give this kid an inch, and we know that already. He is already eating him up as we speak.
Yeah, he's got the Napoleon complex is coming through here.
My question was about to be, there are a lot of stories about Paul Roma and the differences in the professionalism between Paul Roma and Paul Orndorff. Was Paul Roma a pain in the ass to deal with sometimes?
I didn't deal with him very much at all. So he wasn't for me. He might have been for Dusty or some of the agents that worked with him, but I didn't interface with Paul enough to have an opinion to be fair to him.
We're watching Eric try to get the hot tag over to Arn Anderson while Orndorff goes over him. One of the things I wanted to talk about and discuss with you, we talk about Center Stage a lot, and it was the hub of WCW Saturday Night, which this was the A show at the time. You're
Right.
pulling in 2s and 3 ratings and 5 and 6 shares at the time, which was competing and sometimes beating WWF programming on USA. With this being the staple show and the A show, what were you doing at a Center Stage taping? Were you backstage? Were you producing? Were you working with talent, working with Dusty or whoever might have been running creative at the time? What's your role at Center Stage during these tapings?
You know, there were periods of time when I was commentating. So depending on what period of time we're talking about, that would have taken up the majority of my time. I think by this point in time, I was off commentating. And once the show starts, the majority of my work was over with. Right. So I wasn't involved in the physical production of the show unless I was commentating or producing backstage interviews. Producing backstage interviews has always been my favorite thing. But I liked commentating as well quite a bit because it's a performance, it's art, it's trying to find a better way to create emotion with your voice and be better at that. So I love that challenge. I was never particularly good at it. I was adequate at best, but I worked at it. But directing backstage interviews was something that I felt I was pretty good at early on, partly because I had to learn myself. I had to be taught. I didn't come into the business with any experience at all. And I had the good fortune of being trained by Vern Gagne, to a degree, Greg Gagne. And I've had a lot of negative things to say about Greg because he deserves it all. But one of the things that Greg is good at, because he learned from his dad, is teaching the psychology of an announcer, because announcers are characters too. And if you don't have an understanding of what your role is and how to do it and make your talent shine, you just come off as an obnoxious person with a microphone. I always enjoyed that, but probably on this night, I would imagine I was in the production truck, just kind of watching it all go down because my work was pretty much over with.
If a match was the shits, do you make the call for them to retape it? Do you make the call like when the match is over, like there's no way in hell we can air this? Or was it just more along the lines of we're going to have to edit everything out that was terrible and that type of thing?
It depended. More often than not, I deferred to Dusty.
Okay.
Because what happened what happened on television, the physical production of the show was under my domain, so to speak, for lack of a better term. But anything to do with wrestling or talent was really under Dusty's domain. But Dusty and I had a great relationship. We were always tight in that respect. And I would defer to Dusty if he felt like this was enough, we need to do this over again, then we did. If he felt like we could clean it up and edit, then that's what we did. The
finish of the match that has just taken place is Arn Anderson throwing Paul Orndorff over the top rope, causing a DQ. This has been one of the long-standing NWA traditions of an over-the-top rope causes a disqualification, as we see one of the men synonymous with the NWA, Harley Race, with Mean Gene Invader. What do you think of the over-the-top rope DQ finished? Were you a fan of it, or you think it was kind of chicken shit?
No, I like it.
In a good way.
Okay. I like it. You need to have a framework. There needs to be some rules to break in order to create a heel. When nothing is illegal, everything is legal, then who's a heel?
Right.
How can you create emotion if the audience doesn't have an understanding of what's acceptable and not acceptable in the ring? Legal or not legal? It's like watching a football game that just breaks out into a freaking gang fight. Who cares? It's no longer the game. So, I think we need more of that. I'm not suggesting over the top rope yet, but there needs to be more structure and consistency in order to tell a story.
Sure. I agree with you. Without rules, without structure, it's hard to get anybody over in the framework of a match, because then it just ends up being a match, and it's an exhibition without things on the line, without, everybody hates stipulations, but if you're not fighting for anything, what are you fighting for at that point? And if there's not emotion, and we are critical of AEW a lot, but I will say Hangman Adam Page and Jeff Jarrett are about to have a match next week, and it has been built and built and built. And it won't be the first time they've touched, but it's going to be what seems like the biggest stage for them to touch. And not sure when this is going to air, but if you can watch AEW for one thing, Adam Page and Jeff Jarrett, all the confidence in the world, Jeff's going to go out there and have a great match. Adam Page is one of the better wrestlers nowadays. That's going to be something to watch and to see the mix of new school and old school. And knowing Jeff, there will absolutely be a story.
All right, guys, get ready. Now you can be ready when she needs it and get your first month of Blue Chew free. And we've got breaking news here. Blue Chew Max is here. Yeah, it combines the active ingredients of Viagra and Cialis into one chewable. It's a combo that acts fast and it lasts. And that means that great sex is just a few clicks away when you sign up at BlueChew.com. You'll consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. Blue Chew's tablets are made in the USA. They're prepared and shipped directly to your door. And the best part is it's all done online. And that means no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversation, and no waiting in line at the pharmacy. So make your life easier by getting harder and discover your options at BlueChew.com. We've got a special deal for our listeners. Try your first month of Blue Chew free when you use the promo code 83weeks. Just pay $5 shipping. That's promo code 83weeks. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast.
There is nobody better in the ring today at telling a story and creating emotion with that story and the physical dialogue that takes place on the stage that we call a wrestling ring. There is nobody better. And I've said that about Jeff all the way back to my time working with him in TNA. Actually, is when I really learned just how good Jeff Jarrett is at laying out matches, not only for himself, but for other people. I saw that firsthand. He's one of the best. Yeah. He may not be the biggest star of his era, but he's one of the best at what he does. No question about it. I'm not as familiar with Adam Page as you are, obviously, but I just based on what you just said, I respect your opinion. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's going to be quite the match. Again, I'm not sure when our show here is going to air, but I know what's in store for our next fella, Sonny Rogers, and it's Vader. And it's not.
I'd like to be Sonny Rogers right now, right? He's going, oh, fuck.
Have you ever spoken? Look, Vader's got the reputation that and we're right off to the races. He doesn't even have a shirt off, and he's already getting clubbed. The stories of Vader backstage with the enhancement talent, so to speak, are notorious. And I'm pretty sure he just punched him directly in the face. You ever run into any of the enhancement talents or see some of this and hear some of the stories of Vader roughing these guys up?
No, I didn't. And again, I wasn't, hanging out backstage and in the locker room. And, I didn't have a lot of immediate proximity to the talent in general. But you got to keep in mind, this enhancement talent is they're here hoping for an opportunity.
Right.
This guy, I don't remember him. I may not have even, spoken to him, but I guarantee you he came here thinking, if I go out there and I do a really good job and I help get Vader over, not that this kid's going to really help too much, but if I go out there and do my job and let Vader beat the hell out of me, maybe they'll bring me back. Maybe I'll get an opportunity. And the last thing you want to do if you're in that frame of mind and you're hoping to get an opportunity is go backstage and piss and moan about getting beat up.
Right.
Then you might as well just, that's it. You won't be back. Because that, how it is. The word spreads and that's the end of it. You just killed your own career and you didn't even know it.
And speaking of killing your own career, Vader has just shit-canned Nick Patrick because he has gotten the win already with the powerbomb, and he is still going to work on Sonny Rogers.
Vader. Sonny had been around. I don't remember him. I don't recognize him necessarily here in this shot, but I recognize the name. He'd been around quite a bit.
Ricky the Dragon Steamboat is here to make the save and is chopping Harley Race. You talk about a clash of decades right here.
Pretty cool, isn't it? Look at Ricky go. And you see Ricky today, he still looks like he's in great shape, man. Here comes Big Boss Man. Ew.
I can't call him Big Boss Man. You got in trouble for that one.
Whatever. Who's going to sue me now? Nobody gives a shit. Hit me with a cease and desist. I don't care.
The boss, man. You talk about someone. Ray was only, and this is the crazy part to me, he's 7 years in the business at this point. That's it. And he's been to the top, back down, the middle, but 7 years in this business in 1994. And it feels like he's been 15, 16, 17 years. That's crazy to me.
What a cool guy, too. He and Rick Steiner were pretty good buddies, and Rick loved to hunt. I loved to hunt deer, and I loved to hunt anything back then, but, deer hunting especially was kind of cool. And I took my son deer hunting when he was about, 14, 15, probably 14 around this time. No, he was 10, 1994. Garrett would have been 10 years old. I took him deer hunting with Rick Steiner, myself, and Ray Traylor somewhere down in South Georgia. And Ray was with Garrett when Garrett got his first deer.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it was kind of a special moment for Garrett. We always talk about it when hunting season rolls around and we reminisce. But yeah, Ray was a cool guy.
We got Ricky the Dragon Steamboat walking out with fire. When you look at Ricky's career, WrestleMania 3, always a big time moment, him and Randy Savage. But Ricky has always had an amazing presentation, and I think he's always been undervalued in that aspect. Everyone knows he's a great worker. Everyone. But the presentation that he's always put upon himself has always been one of the best, and I think he doesn't get the credit for it.
I agree. He was ahead of his time in many respects. Attention to detail. Even in WCW, where details were sometimes not paid close attention to, we were just in a rush to get the show on. Kind of a Kmart blue light special compared to WWE in that regard, or dollar store version, I should say, today. But Ricky's entrances, his attention to detail, not only in the ring, as we're seeing here with Fidel Sierra, Fidel Castro. Ricky was a perfectionist.
Yeah.
And it shows. Look at the follow through on that chop. That wasn't just a chop. The follow through gave it that kind of, martial arts kind of mystique to it, but it's just a chop. But it looked so much better than just a chop, which is what everybody else does.
Yep.
You know what I freaking hate, Derek, on today's product? Chops. And when you stand and see these guys chopping each other, it is so bullshit. It is such a cheap way to burn time in the ring because you're not really telling a story. That and those fucking forearm exchanges where guys just stand there in the middle of the ring and pound on each other. Like, I'm cool, get it. It's hard style, Japan, blah, 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 blah. Okay, cool. Give me a little bit of that about once every 3 months. But I'm seeing so many people just standing there chopping meat or hitting each other in the head with forearms, and it looks like shit. So for all of you that are listening, which is probably none of you that are currently in the ring working for those companies that allow that garbage, stop doing it. You look like an ass. No talent, mucker futhers.
So I will tell you something that you and Bret Hart both agree on. Chops.
Horrible.
Bret has said for years how much he hates chops. And one of the stories in his book was that how him and Ric Flair were working in WWF in 91. And he told Rick, I'll give you 2 chops. That's it. And Ric Flair, I'm going to take mine. And he did. And then Bret started chopping him back. Flair's count went down every house show match after that. And I always thought that was an interesting story. Bret agrees. I agree. It's hard sometimes to look at some of this stuff, but the finish for Ricky Steamboat with a chop to set up the flying crossbody, 1, 2, 3. Fidel Castro is out of here. And
you said it too, Fidel Castro. Did you do that for purpose?
Fidel Sierra is out of here, and we're moving on to one of the guys who actually is going through something right now. For those who are unfamiliar, Rip Rogers is on Twitter, and he's got some medical issues, has a GoFundMe going on right now to help him out. But he is working with the boss, Ray Traylor, as we just talked about here, who brought a lot of the streamers out from the entrance. But if you guys can contribute, Rip Rogers. Rip is a major player in the training of professional wrestlers and had a lot to do with Pat McAfee's success in professional wrestling, gave him the ability to train with him. But Rip is going through a time, and if this community is always helping out as many people as possible, and Rip is one of those that should be helped out, unfortunately, due to his health issues.
Yeah, perhaps in the edit, we'll make a note and we can put up that GoFundMe information.
Yeah, absolutely. Ray Traylor chasing him around. One of the cool things about watching back wrestling from 30 years ago, in my mind, is the differences in the business. Heel, chicken shit, powder. You don't see it enough today. Again, who are the characters? Who's doing what? Who's the baby faces? Everyone just wants to get their shit in, and it's a big complaint of everyone that is in the business. It's hard when you have 5 minutes to do this, but it happened a lot back then. Why do you think it's gotten away from itself over the years?
I think psychology as a whole has just been diluted. So it's no longer important. The emphasis has been on the physical dynamic, the presentation, the risk-taking, the higher flying, aspects of what goes on inside of the ring. And I understand why. It's dramatic to look at. It's kind of amazing. But I think there's been such an emphasis placed on just, I keep saying high flying, but the aerial, off the top rope, spinning around, doing all that crazy shit. Gymnastics. It's like watching Olympic floor gymnastic competition. Right. And it's cool, but there's no emotion associated with it.
Sure.
All of it happens so fast, as we were talking about with Terra Rising, Triple H, Paul Levesque. Everything he did, you look at Ricky Steamboat. Now, Ricky Steamboat moved fast, but the sequences of what happened was slow enough that the audience could get behind it. Because what you do in the ring doesn't register emotionally or even visually to the audience instantaneously. You've got to let them catch up. You've got to let them wonder what's going to happen next or how that felt or, oh, right. My God. You have to give them time to invest emotionally, or they're just sitting back going, holy shit. And I think there's a lot of holy shit and very little emotion. And I hope it changes.
Do you think part of that is the evolution of the athlete inside the business? It's not 6'6", 6'4", 6'2", 260, 280. We are in the era of smaller athletes. Do you think that's part of the evolution as well?
I think it's a twofold kind of evolution. One is, I think, the luchadors, the Rey Mysterios of the world, the Psychoses of the world, the Eddie Guerreros of the world, the Chris Benoit's during his time of the world, that cruiserweight style that became so popular in the mid-90s is part of it, because it opened the door for a lot of potential professional wrestlers who weren't born to be 6'4", 6'5", and 300 pounds. All of a sudden, you've got 10, 12, 14-year-old kids that are growing up watching guys like Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit and Dean Malenko and on and on and on and on, all the luchadors and Jushin Thunder Liger and all the people that all of a sudden were getting a lot of television time, and kids that were watching 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 years old that said, man, someday I'm going to be a professional wrestler. 20 years before that, they're shit out of luck. You just don't have the genes, kid. But all of a sudden now, if you're 5'10", you're in great shape. You're an athlete. You're a gymnast. You're an amateur wrestler. You're a martial artist. You got a shot. Yeah. So the floodgates kind of opened of that younger generation of talent coming up, and the style suits them. Obviously more than it suits a big guy. So I think it's twofold. I think it's the popularity of that style of wrestling, particularly with the luchadors, and the fact that just in terms of the gene pool / talent pool, there's more of them. Yeah. I mean, look at Darby Allin. I could put him in my pocket and take him for a walk. He would have never gotten a shot in the business 20 years ago, but today he's there and he's doing a great job for what he's doing and where he's doing it. Those opportunities didn't exist. And talking about a talent. Here's another guy. I mean, Brian Pillman was not, I mean, he was probably what, 5'11", maybe 215, 220, maybe, naturally. He might have weighed a little more than that. Here's another guy that probably influenced a lot of that because of some of the things that he could do. He was in great shape though, wasn't he? Oh my God.
So here's what I've taken from this conversation. You and Conan are to blame for the infiltration of smaller people in the business. So
I'll take that.
I'm going to hang my hat on that one. One of the things you brought up was like 96. When you look at WWF in 85, it's a monster factory. It's Hogan squashing King Kong Bundy, Andre the Giant, larger than life people that me and you do not fall in that category of. You're absolutely correct. Ricky Steamboat and Randy Savage, I'll go back to that at WrestleMania 3. They are presented as larger than life. They were not the biggest guys. I think that one of the biggest misconceptions is how big Randy Savage was. Was he thick and broad? Yes. Was he the tallest guy in the world? He wasn't. And I think that the way you're presented and portrayed means a lot. And I think that also evolved over time. You had less cameramen shooting. And I will forever love this shot of Andre the Giant being shot up, making him look like a monster. When the WWF changed a little bit of the production, they had The Undertaker being presented in that way, but not everybody else was presented that way. Again, if you make everybody a monster, no one's a monster. But if you portray them as larger than life characters, I think that goes a long way to the production of what is esteemed that way. And it's all presentation. It's all the way. My God, I forgot Johnny B. Bailey likes to shoot stuff into the crowd. But that evolution as well, the production changed.
Yeah, I mean, there's ways you can shoot, a guy like Randy Savage. No, different. Johnny B. Bad puts a kiss on Jane Fonda. And Ted Turner, which I thought was very cool.
Talk about getting yourself over.
But, there's ways you can shoot talent, too, when you're in production. If you take your camera down low and you're shooting up, you could create the illusion that they're much taller than they really are. Randy Savage is, I think, again, I'm 5'10" and a half. If Randy was taller than me, it wasn't by much, but he looked so much bigger on camera.
Exuded size and demeanor. And when you get in the ring with the likes of Hulk Hogan, and I love this. I don't know how many people know this. If you go back and watch WrestleMania, I'm going to date myself, but I think it's WrestleMania 5, and Hogan and Savage go toe-to-toe, eye to eye. Savage is on his tippy toes. But because the clean shot in is face-to-face, you don't know that. But to me, he looks like he's the same size as Hulk Hogan.
Yep.
Those little things, I think, has gotten away from it. And I don't know why. I don't want to say wrestling today is worse produced or better produced back then, but I think it's just differently produced. And I think Lee Fitting has changed a lot of that. Man, talk about a specimen, Rick Rude. That mustache, just, again, a guy who is, there you go. About as basic a sign as it gets, but it conveys the message. Rick Rude Boo. I think a lot of that has changed over the years. I think Lee Fitting has actually brought a lot of good sports aspects to the production in WWE. You can see it differently now. Just a little bit. Sometimes one tweak makes the world of difference when you rest on your laurels. And I think a lot of that went on in the WWF for a long time with Kevin Dunn. Why change if it's working? Sometimes that one tweak can make a world of difference.
Yeah, and you have to try things. You have to experiment with different things because it's very easy, especially, I know Kevin Dunn gets a lot of heat, and I think a lot of it is undeserved.
Same.
Kevin wasn't the most sociable person, but not everybody is.
Right.
And just because you're not sociable doesn't mean you're a dick. It just means maybe you're uncomfortable socializing. Sure. I kind of relate to that. I can be very sociable in some situations, but others I feel very out of place and awkward, and I tend not to engage. And I think someone like Kevin, who is probably more of a introvert than most people realize, and then you put him into a high pressure, volatile situation like producing live TV, there's just not a lot of time to be sociable. Right. You can come off like a real jackass sometimes under that kind of pressure. But I think Kevin was largely responsible in so many ways for such an amazing evolution of the production values of professional wrestling as a whole, and obviously WWE, but probably got a little comfortable.
Yeah.
And I understand it. It's not good.
Yeah.
But I understand how it happens.
Yeah.
And particularly when you're typically operating at a pretty high level, as Kevin did. Why the fuck with it?
Yeah.
It's working. And you don't even really have time. You're under such pressure to get these shows out the door, and you've dodged bullets so many times just doing what you know how to do that you really aren't that interested in trying new shit out because, let's just get the show out the door.
Yeah. It's 104 live 5-hour shows a year. It's not light work. And I think sometimes that gets lost. Not getting lost is our main event. It is the WCW International Heavyweight title. Rick Rude defending against Johnny B. Bad. The international title, we all know it as the big gold belt, the former NWA championship. You were in the middle of an issue with the NWA with a split. How much of that did you deal with, and how much of that was someone like Dusty dealing with?
That was, it was probably Dusty and Bob Dew. Bob was sitting, we saw Jane, then we saw Ted, then we saw Bill Shaw, and then you saw Bob Dew, who we didn't point out. At this point in time, WCW was split from a management perspective, was split into two divisions. There was wrestling operations and administrative operations. Bob Dew oversaw that.
Gotcha.
There was television and television production. I oversaw that. So the NWA conflict, because part of it was legal, obviously, part of it was relationship with the people involved and trying to resolve the issue. Dusty would have gotten involved in that side of it, I believe. Bob Dew would have been the one that had to sign off on things. So I was aware, but I was not involved.
When you think about the aspect of Turner having to deal with, this is our belt, this is our championship, this is our intellectual property. Do you think that's why sometimes WCW got a bad rap in Turner? Like, why are we dealing with this shit? It is, I'm going to say it, everyone's going to laugh at me, silly, fake pro wrestling, and we're fighting over a title and a branding and an IP. Why don't we just give it back to them? Do you think some of that stigma bled into a lot of the issues in Turner Corporate?
I don't think so, because Turner Corporate understood intellectual property and trademark, copyright, all that stuff. I just think Turner Corporate, everyone except for Ted, looked at wrestling as such lowbrow, one step up from porn. That was the attitude. It's like, there's porn, there's professional wrestling, and then there's sitcoms and drama,
That's a t-shirt.
Yeah. What was it? What did I say that's a t-shirt?
One step above porn.
Yeah. I mean, that was the attitude about professional wrestling, not just in Turner Corporate, but even within the entertainment industry as a whole. It still is stigmatized to this day as being just kind of low-end, lowbrow entertainment. It's wrong, clearly.
I agree.
And we're learning. The culture is finally beginning to understand, and the media industry is beginning to understand. But certainly at this point in time, that was an issue internally as well as externally.
So it's funny you bring that up, because it's one of my last topics I want to cover with you, because we are in the main event. Media culture and professional wrestling has absolutely changed in the last 25 years.
Right.
I'm gonna count myself as part of this conversation because, again, 1999, I was 14 years old. So I grew up watching wrestling from the time I was 4, but the height of it was 99, 98, Attitude Era, NWO, Hogan Goldberg. The people that are now in charge of media companies are my age, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42. The acceptance of professional wrestling has a lot to do with the fact that there were 10 million, 11 million, 12 million people watching the Monday Night Wars at its peak. And a majority of them were people my age, the demo of 13 to 25. And we are now the next generation of media moguls is probably not the right way to say this, but
No, but executives, decision makers,
media executives grew up watching this and they were fans of it, and they may have lapsed out of it at some point, like I did in my early 20s, because it just wasn't something I was captivated by anymore, and the product had changed and evolved. But you get back into these things when you become successful and have free time. That media landscape, I think, that has changed isn't given enough credit to people my age at that time who are now rising in the ranks, who find it more acceptable. It is no longer it's fake. We are well aware it's predetermined, but the change of that landscape has really come along in the last 5 to 10 years. And I think the growth of that is my generation. What do you say to that?
No, I think you're absolutely right. When you think about it, if you go back to, let's say, mid 90s, even before, we'll say 1990, the people who were heading up ad agencies, the people who were in the media business in general, television executives, making decisions about what type of content they want on their network, what kind of audience that they want to build, and what kind of content will help them get there. Those executives who are, 40 years old now, or were 40 years old then, they grew up watching wrestling when it was in front of 50 people or 100 people in a television soundstage somewhere. The business is completely different than it obviously is now, or was in the 90s. But the impressions that those executives had were impressions like you had when you were 14.
Right.
Your impression was, holy shit, you and the other 10 million people watching with you, whether, combined WWE, WCW audience. So you have a different perspective of the product than someone who would have been your age in 1990 because of the way you grew up watching the product.
Do you think the acceptance that it is predetermined, it's entertainment, it's not real sport, by the late 90s was more relevant to the growth of it than it was a long time lying about the sport? No, it's real. No, it's everything. That evolution, I think, was an important part too. And I think that gets downplayed a lot.
Man, when you think about it, if you allow, I would say you, not you personally, but if one allows oneself to step back and disconnect from all of your emotional baggage and predetermined thoughts and ideas, and just walk into a conversation clean and open-minded, I think and it's really weird because of all the shit that Vince McMahon is going through and all the horrible shit that we've read about and seen about, and all of, it is what it is. I don't know what's true, what's not true. Set it all aside. In terms of where we are today, one of the things that was the most controversial that people that I knew in the wrestling business were like, oh, it's going to kill. Oh, the business is dead. Acknowledging that it's just scripted. Oh my, everybody thought the business was going to die. I think it was one of the most important tactical moves, strategic moves that could have been made, and is one of the reasons that wrestling finally grew into its own, by not 100%. Trying to pretend it's real, but by saying, guess what? Gone with the Wind didn't really happen either, bitches. Outlander didn't really happen. The $1 Million Man couldn't really do the $1 Million Man shit everybody thought the $1 Million Man shit was doing. It was really worth about $1.40.
Insulting the audience's intelligence for so long and pretending it was real, I think really hurt. The embracement of it would have changed things. And for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, and the funny aspect of this is 1989, Vince McMahon said to the state of New Jersey, we are predetermined. We are scripted. Stop taxing us like we are not. And that was one of the big flag moments of people being like, he killed the business. We're never going to be able to draw money again. How are people going to believe? Everyone knew it was just saying the quiet part out loud. And I was 4 at the time. And I remember hearing it on the news because I live in South Jersey. And I remember it because it was right around the time for SummerSlam. And SummerSlam was in Philadelphia. And look, the news at the time made a mockery of it, but it was a big deal in ramifications I didn't understand at that point. But no one reported it like it was real news. It was, oh yeah, by the way, they said this. No shit. It's fake. It's predetermined. It's okay. Say the quiet part out loud and we'll move on from it. And we did. And the growth of the business 10 years later can almost be pinpointed back to that point. You get out of the steroid era, you get out of the idea that Vince McMahon was on trial with Hulk Hogan for distributing steroids, and then all of a sudden it was, yep, guess what? It's still fake, but we're still providing entertainment, and that's what it is, and that's where it gets lost to me a lot of times.
Yeah, and I think and look, the reason that Vince and Linda was as much a part of that decision as anybody.
Money.
She had a much stronger hand in the operation of WWF at the time than people remember. But the decision to come clean was a financial decision.
Yep.
Because the athletic commissions and a lot of the markets that WWE was operating in treated it like a sport because
they enabled it.
Pretend it was.
Right.
And Vince went, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. We shouldn't have this expense. Let's get rid of it, and made that decision. It was a big decision.
Yes.
But now we get to look at wrestling and talk about storyline, talk about character development, talk about the same things that one would discuss when talking about a new series that's coming out on Netflix or Amazon or whatever. You're talking about character development. You're talking about story arcs. You're talking about plot points. You're talking, the same elements and appreciating it for that. I like to compare sometimes when I'm talking to people who aren't necessarily wrestling fans, if I'm talking to in a business environment, or I did a TED talk a couple of years ago. It was having fun talking to people who weren't really wrestling fans. When you describe wrestling for what it is, and from my perspective, it's much like a Broadway play. In a Broadway play, you've got a live audience, and as an actor or actress, your job is to get that audience invested in your story, get them to forget that they're watching a performance emotionally, and give them permission to invest emotionally. And the way you get that permission from someone watching on on Broadway or in a wrestling environment is to be believable and to emote. It's no different. Now, on a Broadway play, the narrative is the spoken word. But in professional wrestling, you're on a stage. When you're on Broadway, you're on a stage. Your jobs are exactly the same, and it takes the exact same skills and abilities and magic. Only in a wrestling ring, it's a physical narrative. You're telling your story physically as opposed to the spoken word. Beyond that, distinct difference, there is none.
Correct.
It's the same.
That's
why I bitch so much about lack of story. It's like, motherfuckers, you don't know what you're not doing.
Speaking of stories, we have, I don't want to say ignored this match, but it's a really good match between Rick Rude and Johnny B. Bad. And I forget how good Rick Rude was in the ring until you watch him and all the little things. Forget about the hip swivel, just the ability to emote on his face. He is one of the best. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely. He was so good. Another Minnesota boy. That's why. Minnesota kicked out some great talent.
Canada gets a lot of credit. Minnesota had a lot of talent as well.
Oh, Road Warriors, Rick Rude, Kurt Hennig. So many great talents. Rick Rude was a badass too. He went to Robbinsdale High School. He went to high school with my wife.
Wow.
And I went to Minnetonka High School. We were in the same region, Region 5. So I wrestled, Robbinsdale High School and played football against each other and all that crap. I never knew Rick personally in high school, but shortly after high school, we knew a lot of the same people, even though we didn't know each other. And yeah, I would always go to the bars where Rick Rude was hanging out because inevitably he'd kick the shit out of somebody. It was so much fun to watch. It was.
I believe that. Oof. Mark Marrow has been touring the country as of late as a motivational speaker, and the work he's been doing has been tremendous. Have you heard from Mark recently or talked with him?
I talked to a guy who has either wrote the book or is in the process of writing a book.
Interesting.
Super guy. And I've actually done a podcast with him a time or two because he's that good. Ben Veal is his name. And I haven't talked to Mark, although I'm going to reach out to him now that my summer's over with and travel's kind of slowed down. I do want to talk to Mark. I'm so impressed
Yeah.
I want to say proud wouldn't be the right word because I didn't have anything to do with it, but so impressed with his work. He's a lot like DDP that way. You know, these two guys have become larger than life impressions on people now than they were when they were wrestling. And I love to see people who have taken their wrestling career and gone on to something different, or dare I say bigger or better, because you're helping people.
Yep. Yeah, DDP is just an amazing story. Mark is an amazing story. If you don't, I know Mark had some kind words after our Johnny B. Bad episode. I don't even know if that was this year or last year on X. So that's great to hear that you're involved with someone behind the scenes with him. Rick Rude got the win with the Rude Awakening. We are finally at the end of this. It's Harley Race cutting the final promo in the build up to the boss. Fortunately, during this promo, he refers to him as Boss Man twice. When you hear that backstage, are you just putting your hands in your head going, oh, that's another letter that we're going to have to deal with?
Yes and no. I mean, you make a note because you know it's going to be an issue. It's maybe a little issue, maybe a big issue. You don't know until it happens. But it's like, okay, let's get ready. Let's give legal a heads up. It's coming.
Eric, what do you think of this episode from 30 years ago, WCW Saturday Night?
I'm actually quite surprised. I think from a production value standpoint, it looked a lot better than I remembered it would. I think Center Stage actually looked pretty good as a venue.
Yeah.
You know, you still had a lot of that crowd. First of all, you could tell by the suits and ties, particularly in the first few rows. A lot of that crowd was a Turner Broadcasting crowd, right? Not necessarily a wrestling crowd, but visually it looked better than I thought it would. In the quality of the product in the ring, I would compare it to, it's certainly better than AEW today. Maybe not quite WWE level today, but damn good. Pretty proud of it, actually.
Do you think the business is missing enhancement matches?
I don't think there's time for it anymore. I mean, I think you can do it occasionally to make a point if you're really trying to get somebody over, but I think you'd have to be very careful and judicious about how often you did it and who you did it with. There's just the time, you know, especially Raw's going to, now I've heard two things. Maybe, you know, you're more plugged in than I am. First, I heard Raw was going to go from 3 down to 2. Now I'm heard it's going back to 3. I don't know what the status is, but if it's back to 2 hours, I know it's, you know, back when all wrestling was only 1 hour, the idea of doing it 2 hours, sort of like, oh my God, you know, Nitro was the first one to do it. And then it's like, oh, this is working so well. We're going to spend $100 to do 2 hours. Why don't we spend $105 to do 3 hours? So we ended up doing even more. But a 2-hour show, trying to get everybody over with all the PLEs and pay-per-views and special events. You just don't have the time to do squash matches anymore.
The current story is that when October 5th takes place, I think it's October 5th, Raw will cut itself back to 2 hours for the last run on the USA Network. When it goes to Netflix, it will be 3 hours. There is talk that when January comes, SmackDown will go to 3 hours. So they would be on the hook of producing a lot of live television presentation. So I don't know what the world is going to look like yet. None of that's been confirmed on the SmackDown side. The Raw side has been confirmed. Have you had a chance to watch the Cody Roman Reigns segment from SmackDown yet?
Yes. Holy crap.
I'm going to, if we can find 8 more minutes to discuss that. Nah, not 8 minutes. Holy crap. Jeremy Borash seemed to be a big part of that. And you worked with Jeremy in WCW and TNA. How good was that in your opinion?
It was next level. You hear people, and I hate it when I use the term because I have, taking something to the next level. Taking production to the next level, taking storytelling to the next level is not appropriate enough for the quality of work that we saw. Really, this is the kind of thing that gets me excited to be a wrestling fan again. I've said it a million times, and I only keep repeating it because sometimes people forget that I've been producing wrestling or had been producing wrestling for over 30
and entertainment.
And in general entertainment. So when I watch something, even if it's something that I'm, like I mentioned the Outlander series, which my wife and I are really enjoying. We're in season 5, episode 4 right now. The storytelling, the character development, the production, everything about that show is just mind-boggling to me. But it's especially when it comes to wrestling, it's the storytelling, the depth of story, the detail of the story, the discipline, the emotional journey that you're going on with story. Sometimes it's the physical production things that we see that are different than that we've been seeing for years. Integrating sponsors into certain opportunities. I get more excited about the components of what makes a good wrestling show than a good wrestling show.
Sure.
I know that probably doesn't make sense to some people, but the evolution of the business, seeing the business elevate, to your point, as we talked about, getting ad agencies and media executives to go, holy shit, yeah, I know this is different than what we're used to, but the storytelling and attention to detail is just as significant in what we saw with Cody and Roman is what you're going to see in any dramatic series on television. Maybe as good as what you're going to see in a feature film.
Yep.
So I can't say enough good things. Hats off to Jeremy Borash. When I worked with Jeremy, he was an announcer.
Yeah.
He was interested in production, and he did a little bit on the side, kind of because he was interested in it and just wanted to.
Sure.
But what he's been able to achieve in WWE, I think, is really, really admirable.
Yeah. Eric, we're going to wrap it up there. I'd like to thank you for taking the time coming to the bunkhouse on a very early Sunday morning. I greatly appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed watching.
I did. I enjoyed working with you, Derek, and it was really fun going back and looking at this episode. Always fun to do things here for ad-free shows.
I greatly appreciate it, guys. Stay tuned. There is a lot of bonus content dropping over the next few days. It seems like every day I get an email. This is coming out. That's coming out. Stay tuned. There is more coming. We got 83 weeks coming up this week. Drop a follow, like, and subscribe at 83weeks.com. 83 Meats. Keep your eyes out for. Check out Eric.
Watch for my meat. My meat's coming right at you.
And there's another t-shirt by the end of this conversation. Thank you all for joining us. Greatly appreciate it. And we'll see you again next time.
All right, that'll do it this week on 83 Weeks. We hope you guys had a blast hanging out with us as we talked about the new releases from WWE. And then we went back 31 years to see Billionaire Ted and a very young Triple H. Next week, though, we're going to talk about one of our all-time favorites here on the program. I know Eric has a lot of love for him, and I do too. To know him is to love him. Next week, we're talking all things Dustin Rhodes right here on 83weeks.com. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson here to tell you a little more about what adfreeshows.com is all about. Get early, ad-free access to more than a dozen of your favorite wrestling podcasts every single week, starting at just $9. That's less than 20 cents an episode each month. And yes, you can listen to them all directly through Apple Podcasts or your regular podcast apps. How easy is that? Ad-free shows also has thousands of hours worth of bonus content and docuseries like Title Chase, Eric Fires Back, Conversations with Conrad, and The Insiders. Plus new series like The Book with David Crockett, Monday Mailbags with Mike Chioda and Nick Patrick, and a whole lot more. And you want to talk about early? You can't get any earlier than listening to the shows live. You can be a part of the live studio audience as we record the podcast. Plus, ride shotgun alongside your favorite childhood heroes for live watch-alongs, Q&As, and other interactive experiences every single month. Come on now, see for yourself what thousands of other wrestling fans from around the world have discovered, that adfreeshows.com is the best value in wrestling. Check it out today, and hey, when you do, the first week is completely free. adfreeshows.com.